Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm very thrilled to welcome Andrew Campbell back to the podcast today for this special bonus episode celebrating the 25th anniversary of one of my favorite movies, Scream, released in December of 1996. How are we doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great, despite what's going on here. I'm dressed up in a full Drew Barrymore costume today because I felt like if I wanted to really get into it, if I want to really discuss the movie, that I had to be in costume. 100%.
Yeah, so for our listeners, Andrew is wearing the Casey Becker costume, blood and all. He's got the blonde wig, which I didn't know until I watched that Drew Barrymore clip the other day, like how she came to get the blonde wig. It was Michelle Pfeiffer in Scarface. She wanted the exact same wig, the exact same hair. I did not know that until a few days ago. I'd always wondered that, like, it's obviously not her real hair. But I didn't know it was based on Michelle Pfeiffer in Scarface.
I did not know that at all until the video.
So if she had picked a different wig, you'd be wearing a different wig right now.
I know, maybe it would be a little more comfortable, but...
So your costume is not Casey Becker at the beginning of the movie, it's after she's been stabbed.
Yeah, it's first stab. It's like the classic when she's running and she gets stabbed in the shoulder area.
The shocking moment where you're like, oh, she might not live. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Up until that shot, you're like, she's gonna make it.
Yeah, she's Drew Barrymore, so she has to
Drew Barrymore. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't like a huge superstar in 1996, but everybody knew who she was, starting from E.T. in 82. And then in the 90s, she had been in some bigger projects and people knew who she was. She was a celebrity and nobody in 96 would have expected her to die in the first 10 minutes of a movie. As we'll get into the research here, it's really interesting, like how Drew Barrymore came to play Casey. She was supposed to play Sydney.
Yeah. I just watched a clip of her show when she had Chelsea Handler and Ross, or get his last name,
Matthews.
Yes, and he does all the entertainment stuff. He just had them on the show, and she was discussing. Yeah, she's like, she was just like, I was set to play this, but she's like, I really wanted to die off in the beginning. He thought that would be a really fun thing to do, and it's become iconic now.
Yeah, on her show, she said it was just an epiphany she had one night that she was like, you know how I would best serve this movie? Playing Casey at the beginning, because the audience will not expect me to die. But then you look online, some of the research says she was busy with other projects, and the only way she could participate in Scream was to just play the opening scene. So I don't know, maybe it's a mix of the two, but I'm sure it's probably both. But yeah, before we get into some more research on the movie and the opening, the classic, iconic opening scene, like what do you remember, like the first time seeing this movie? Like, do you remember, was it like a DVD at home? Like what was the first time you saw this movie?
So my very first time watching Scream is actually like a very kind of vivid memory. I wasn't even in school yet. I was a little kid. I mean, I was probably like 6.
6 years old.
And I was like 6 years old. Now I couldn't, of course, finish it because my mom was like, "You can't watch this." But my oldest brother Sean, he was homesick from school, and it was like 7 a.m., maybe even before that. And I just remember it was dark. It was so dark outside, but I don't know what time of the year this was. But he was watching Scream, and it was the opening scene with Drew Barrymore. And my mom were sitting and watching it, and I remember the scene where she was outside, and she was hiding from him, and then he jumps out of the window and attacks her. And I remember that scene, and that's like really as far as I could get into it was that scene, because my mom was like, "No, you can't watch this. This is too scary for you." Because it was, I mean, I remember this because I guess it was pretty scary. And so I had to leave, and I never got to see it for a while after that. But another vivid memory, I used to have migraines pretty often as a kid, and they would last all day. They were awful. So I would hide in my parents' bedroom with the lights out and watch TBS. And TBS played Scream 1, 2, and 3 all the time. Like the
TBS? I don't
edit,
remember that.
yes, TBS. They always, but it was always edited, so like they didn't have any
Yeah.
curse words or like they didn't
Yeah.
show all like the crazy death stuff. But they played Scream so much, and so I watched. I would watch those all the time because they always played on TBS.
Mm-hmm.
And I ever had a migraine, it was either that or Law and Order SVU marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like always how I really got to love those movies because I would just watch them when I wasn't feeling too great. And
So wait. So the first time you watched Scream, the first one all the way through, was the TBS edited version?
oh yeah,
No.
absolutely.
So when did you
Absolutely.
first see like the unedited, like for content version?
You know what's so funny? I can't even. I feel like I can't even remember. I mean, I feel like it would have to be on HBO. I'm sure I watched it on HBO.
Okay.
Probably at my neighbor's house. My parents, we didn't really have. I don't think we had paid for HBO, but our neighbors had it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm sure I watched it at their house when we were having like a sleepover or something. Because yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's just like one of those things where like I don't remember it not being in my life anymore. Like I can't
Right.
remember the first time I saw it because I've watched it so many times. It's just like it's almost like a reflex. I'm like, oh yeah, like Scream. I've seen it. I saw it. Oh yeah.
But whenever you saw the regular version of the movie, you must have been shocked by all the violence. You're like, oh
yeah.
wow.
Well, and I remember when Casey was hanging from the tree. And I saw that and I was like,
right.
that's they don't show that part.
So that's not in. So what's the edited version? You just see the mom screaming, and then it cuts to Nev Campbell.
I think they do. Basically, I think they might do some blurring, but I also know they on the edited version, especially in the end, there's an edited version too. They just crop it differently where you don't see certain stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen the NC-17 version with like the 28 seconds or whatever it is of gore added back in? You know, there's like a cut of the movie. I saw it in 1997 on Laserdisc.
Oh.
I don't know if it ever came out on DVD, but there's like a version of the movie they add like the shot of Drew Barrymore when she's hanging from the tree in the finished movie. It like goes really fast up to her face. It like just slowly went up to her body. Like it didn't cut really fast. And there was a few other little changes, like the shot of Tatum getting her neck caught in the garage. Like you saw more of it for like 2 more seconds. Like you saw her head like twist.
Oh wow, I've not.
It's pretty rare. Yeah, it's pretty rare. I don't know if it ever came out on DVD. I was watching this movie again this week, which is always like any excuse I have to watch Scream again. And I have like an old DVD from like 97, and the movie print itself, it looked weird. Like it looked like I was like, I need to get like a Blu-ray of this movie. This DVD is way too old. But any excuse to have. I've seen this movie so much that I actually watched it 2 nights ago with the commentary on by Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven, which I've only heard like maybe once, like many, many years ago. And I was excited to kind of hear their comments on it because I like know this movie almost by heart at this point. So, and watching it again, I still notice things that I've never noticed before.
Oh wow,
which is really cool. So, what do you know about the origins of this movie?
Well,
like, how did this film come to be?
I mean, I know, yeah, it definitely took a while for Wes Craven to kind of agree to it, and it was such like him. And I feel like it's also so different for him because he did, his classic, Freddy Krueger. So like, I feel like it was interesting for him to go in a direction where it was like real life, where it wasn't a supernatural, villain. But I mean, it makes sense because I think he contributed so much to the horror movie genre, and then to make a movie about those horror movies, like he's almost making a movie about himself, or like the things he did, and I just think, and I'm like mind blowing. I love it. It's such a like a fun little concept. It's almost like it's an idea that you like hear and you're like, oh my god, why haven't I done that earlier? Like that's such a fantastic idea. And I remember just like them discussing the casting and how I know we mentioned it before, the getting Drew Barrymore and having her sign on to be Sydney, but then she changed it. I remember, And with Courtney Cox, they were afraid like Courtney Cox was not going to be intimidating enough.
Which
They
I
thought,
which
oh
I
no,
understand. Yeah.
oh totally get him. It's like we know her as Monica, like 100%. And then I mean, we'll discuss it later, but like her first real scene in the movie,
Yeah.
that to me, that whole scene with Sydney and everything, like that's my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Oh,
I
okay.
could watch it 1,000 times. We'll discuss it later.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you know way more than I do, because I feel like it's almost like numb to me this one. Like, oh yeah, like that. But now, yeah, it's the cast is so they're all such fresh faces.
Fresh
and like,
faces.
I feel like such a risk to take. Like, I'm gonna take this away. Such like a risk to take. On all these new people. Like even Courtney Cox was like so very new at that point. She's only been on Friends for a little bit. I think like David Arquette was, he was barely anyone. So Drew Barrymore was really just the big name they used, and they just brought people in, and they're like, oh, by the way, now she's gone.
Yeah. What's interesting is that I think she was attached for Sydney, and part of the reason for doing that, because she was, as she said in that recent interview, that she was like a silent producer. She was trying to get the movie made, and so attaching herself in the lead role, that kind of got the movie in motion to be actually produced, and getting the cast in order and getting Wes Craven interested in doing it, I think, was Drew Barrymore. She was like the key person to make this movie happen, which is really important. Yeah, so I have some origins about the film that I think are really interesting. Before I get to that real quick, I wanted to share the first time I saw this movie. Wes Craven has been a part of my life since I can remember. One of the first horror films I saw when I was very young, like maybe even 9 or 10, was Nightmare on Elm Street. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite horror films. I just think he is a brilliant director. And it's like around the same time, that's when I saw Halloween for the first time. And it's funny when you were saying you saw Scream for the first time edited, because the first version I saw of Halloween was the TV cut, which was heavily edited, and it had 3 bonus scenes that they shot in 1980. Have you seen that version of Halloween? There's like extra stuff of Loomis at the very beginning, like talking about Michael. And there's an extra scene with Jamie Lee Curtis where she's like in a bath towels around her hair, and she's like sitting in her living room, and like Annie calls and she's talking to her on the phone. Have you ever seen that version of the movie? It's called the television cut of Halloween.
I've never seen that ever. I've never. Callie, come here, honey.
So that was the first time I'd ever seen Halloween. And then when I finally saw like the theatrical cut down the road, I'm like, where are those scenes? And I had to look it up on the internet. I'm like, oh, those were shot later for the television version, because Halloween is only 90 minutes and they had to cut stuff out of the movie for like violence and stuff. And then adding in commercials, it wasn't long enough. So they went to John Carpenter in 1980. They said, we need about 7-8 minutes of footage for the original movie. So while they were shooting Halloween 2, like they had the cast, they had Donald Pleasance, Jamie Lee Curtis. Then they, on the side, they shot these other scenes for the Halloween TV version. Fans of Halloween, some of them don't know that cut. It's not widely available, but I do have one of the earlier DVDs has it. I do have it on the shelf. It's really, if you're a fan of Halloween, Andrew, you got to check out you can probably find it on YouTube too. Just the TV scenes. I think there's 4 of them. There's 4 new scenes that they shot later.
I've never heard that ever. I've never heard that. Literally, I'm going to do that as soon as we're done, because I just watched all the Halloweens and Halloween Kills. Watched Halloween H2O the other day, which I personally do love Halloween H2O.
I'm a huge H2O fan.
There's so many Scream references in that, which I will. Oh my gosh, like it's mind blowing. I was watching again, and I was just like, Scream, 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 Scream. They use so much of the same music. I was just like, this is wonderful. I adore it.
Halloween H2O is a response to the success of Scream. I think if there was no Scream, there could have been an H2O, but it wouldn't have been the same movie.
No, absolutely. Oh no, definitely not. I think
Evan Williamson worked on H2O. I mean, yeah, it would have been a different thing. But the first time I saw Scream, it was December of 96. I just turned 12 years old, and I just moved to Reno. And it's an early memory I have of knowing nothing going into a movie. I remember had never heard of the movie. Usually now we know of a movie coming out 2-3 months away. And I remember like that week in the paper, it showed like coming this Friday, Scream, the acclaimed new thriller by Wes Craven. It didn't have a picture of Drew Barrymore or anybody from the movie. It just said the title and Wes Craven. And I remember turning to my dad. I'm like, oh my God, Dad, there's a Wes Craven movie coming out Friday. Can we go? And he's like, yeah. And we went and saw it. And I mean, nothing, I knew nothing. I didn't know if it was a horror film or what kind of a movie it was. I remember the first scene with Casey Becker when they're doing the movie trivia. I was the guy in the back at age 12. I'm like, no, it's not Jason. It's his mom. I was like doing that from the back. But I knew that first time, that was like a very impressionable age of 12. Like I just really gotten into horror films the last couple of years. And I could recognize very early on, I'm like, oh, this is really good. And then it just never goes awry. Like the whole movie, it works so beautifully. I remember walking out and I turned to my dad and said, that's the best movie of 1996. And my dad really liked it too. I remember my dad loved Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. He loved her character. Remember, that's what he was talking about on the drive home. So I've always loved this movie. I remember very soon after it came out, there was talk of Scream 2. And then I remember like all of 1997, right? I'm like, oh my God, Scream 2, it's happening, it's coming. And that's kind of been my life ever since. It's like, when's the next one? And then, because it's like Scream 2, we had to wait less than a year.
Yeah.
Scream came out December 20th, 96. Scream 2 was December 12th, 97. Came out less than a year later, which is like unheard of. The fact that Scream 2 is as great as it is, it's like, how did they pull that off? So fast.
Like best, like, I mean, it is like one of those sequels that's like a really rare. I remember reading the DVD box and it said like a Hollywood rarity, like a horror sequel that's better than the original. Now I'm not gonna say it's better than the original, but I think they're very close together.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've talked about in the podcast an episode before. I'm trying to remember which one. Oh, we did like a talk about horror movie sequels. Like it's tough for me. I have affection in some ways for all three sequels, but I think if I had to pick the best of the Scream sequels, probably be Scream 2. It's just a little bit more streamlined. It's a little bit more connected to the first one, as Absolutely. We will get into. But so let's go back to the origins of the movie. So Kevin Williamson, he had never, like, I think he might have sold a couple things, but he had never had a movie produced yet, right? He was a young, aspiring screenwriter. He was writing short stories, screenplays. He wrote a script called Teaching Mrs. Tingle. The original script was, of course, Killing Mrs. Tingle. He was able to sell that, but it languished in development hell for many years. After, of course, the success of Scream and Scream 2, he was able to write and direct Teaching Mrs. Tingle from 1999. Not the most acclaimed movie. Did you see that movie?
I've not seen that movie.
Helen Mirren is great in it. Everything around. Okay. Helen Mirren is the teacher from Hell, and she's great. Everything around her, I think it was one of those movies. There were too many cooks, right? Like there were probably a lot of, because it was the only movie Kevin Williamson directed. I'm sure there was a lot of people on set and giving him this and that advice. And it's like trying to be a thriller and a comedy, but it doesn't succeed the way Scream does. Like there's not that good balance. It's just like, am I supposed to laugh at this? Am I supposed to be scared? I don't know. But yeah, that was like his first like project that kind of was slowly getting off the ground, but he could not pay his bills. So do you know that he wrote Scream in 3 days? Did you know that?
I did not know 3 days. Oh my God. There's so much I don't know.
Yeah. So he got the idea and he said, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to write this thing. I'm going to spend a weekend writing this thing. He pulled like a John Hughes. John Hughes is a famous example of someone who could write a script in a weekend. John Hughes wrote Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a weekend. Like he started it on Friday and Monday morning he turned it in. That's pretty unheard of. Usually it takes longer to write a screenplay.
Oh, maybe a little bit, a couple extra days.
Yeah, so over the course of 3 days, he hunkered down in a little room in Palm Springs somewhere, and he wrote the whole script to Scream, as well as outlines for Scream 2 and Scream 3. He focused on the Scary Movie script because it was a film he wanted to see. It was a movie that nobody was making. Remember, he wrote this in 1995. 1995 is a very dry period of horror films. Like if you look from like 93 to Scream, like there's not much. Like there's Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 94, which I love. But like 1995, 1996 before Scream, it's like there's like nothing. Like it was a very dry period for horror. So this partly the reason why this movie is so important is that it got horror back into the theater. So let's see. So he brought the script to his agent. His agent, Rob Paris, said this is not going to sell. It's too violent. It's not going to sell. So they put it up on a Friday. By Monday, there was a huge bidding war. Many studios wanted this, including Paramount, Universal, Morgan Creek Productions. Producer Kathy Conrad read the script, felt it was what the Weinstein brothers were looking for at their new Dimension Films, which was part of Miramax, right? So it's so affiliated with Scream in my mind, the Dimension Films logo at the beginning. You know?
Oh yeah. Halloween, when Halloween HBO started,
yeah,
I noticed it was like Dimension Films. I was like, another Scream reference. This is exactly how the other one opened up.
Because I can't remember if there was another film before Scream that had that, but I remember like in the years following, whenever I'd go see a movie in the theater and it opened with the Dimension Films, I'd get like these chills thinking back to Scream. Just that opening logo is so classic.
Exactly.
Because the way it opens with like the phone ring and everything, it's so great. But so I guess it came down to two people. It came down to the Weinstein brothers at Dimension or Oliver Stone, Andrew, the director of JFK and Platoon, and I guess he was interested in buying it for his company. But the Weinstein brothers, I guess they offered a little less money, but they said, we will make this. Like, we're not going to just buy this and put it on the shelf. We will make this like in the next few months. Like, this is happening. And so that's why Kevin Williamson went with the Weinstein brothers. He decided that he wanted to get the movie made. I guess the bid was $400,000 from Miramax plus a contract for 2 sequels. And so, yeah, I think if you're a young screenwriter looking for some money, if someone said, we'll pay $400,000 and we'll make it, you say, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like this is a guarantee that it's going to be coming out, like, and that your work wasn't like wasted. It's
right.
Just like,
I met a screenwriter once. I want to say like in college, I met a screenwriter who was in like his 60s. He was very wealthy and he had sold more than 15 scripts. None of them had ever been made.
Wow.
None of his scripts ever got made. And he was a very wealthy man from selling his scripts. Isn't that weird?
That's great. Well, I mean, that's, I was like, would I like that or not? Would I be okay with that? I mean, I'm very broke.
I can't remember his name. I just remember him telling me that story of like I guess 2 or 3 almost happened. You know, it's like, wow, that's very strange. It's almost like you're living an invisible life. Because every time you meet somebody, you'd say, oh, I'm a screenwriter. And they'd say, of course, well, what films have I seen that you wrote? None.
None of.
So that's weird. I mean, as a novelist, you sell a book, it comes out. As a screenwriter, it doesn't necessarily mean the movie gets made. So obviously Williamson was hoping this one would happen.
Well, I feel like, just like, I mean, just see like their passion. They're like, we like it so much, we'll make it in the next few months.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably also just so like comforting as well to be like, oh my God, like people really do like this stuff. And like, I mean, I think that's wonderful. Like, he definitely went in the right direction because you want someone with the passion that you had for when you were writing it, who would want to produce it. So, I mean, he definitely made the great call on that.
Yeah. So the Weinstein brother, that was like the big creative force, the producer really getting this going. It was not Harvey, it was Bob, the other one. Most of us, of course, know of Harvey, his downfall the last few years. Bob Weinstein is the brother that's not talked about as much. He was the one really guiding Scream forward. He was the one who thought of Wes Craven. He said, I think Wes Craven would be perfect for this because of its balance of comedy and terror. And he approached Wes Craven. As I said before, Craven said no. Craven really wanted to move away at this point, away from the horror genre. He wanted to do other things. He'd been doing horror for 20 years. He was like, he was over it. And I guess he was busy. He was in development on The Haunting, which would eventually be made in 1999. Wes Craven in 95, early 96, he was working on The Haunting, but that project fell apart. As that was falling apart, they did go to other directors, Robert Rodriguez, Danny Boyle, George A. Romero, and Sam Raimi. I'm like,
oh, Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi could have been a good choice. That might have been okay. I mean, I think it would
Yeah.
have been a more stylized movie. I don't think that would have been a terrible direction. I don't know about Danny Boyle for a scary movie. That would have been I don't think he ever made a scary film. Well, I guess there's 28 Days Later in 2003, but like this kind of stylized, like a teen slasher movie, I would be intrigued to see what Danny Boyle would have done. But Williamson was kind of, I don't know how much power Williamson had. He's like a young screenwriter, probably not much, but I guess he was saying no to these guys. Williamson also was for Wes Craven, who I guess was like his hero of directors. He was like, get Craven, he would be perfect for this. Craven was approached, I think, at least 3 times, and he kept saying no. There's this, it wasn't in the research here, but I remember him, I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a story he told. He had like, he was signing stuff, and some young person came up and said, when are you going to do another kick-ass scary movie again? It's been a long time. And Craven reflected on that and said, you know, it has been a long time since I've made a really successful scary movie. I guess Nightmare really would have been the last one 12 years before. And that was also a part of why Craven ultimately said, you know what, let's do one more. Let's do one more really crazy, successful, scary movie. I'm so relieved that Craven came on board this one. I don't know what this movie looks like without him, because obviously the script is the show and we need a great script, but the way Craven puts this all together is so masterful. You know, this is someone who's been in the genre for a long time, and I just think it just feels right with him in the driver's seat. I don't know about you.
No, absolutely, I totally agree. Because I mean, just the direction you listed off, I was just like, I don't know how I would even like how that would even have gone. But I think also just when you hear like it's a Wes Craven film, you automatically have this idea of like the horror and the style, and like, oh, we know this is going to be a good horror movie. Like just having his name put in there are automatically like creates some kind of impression.
Yeah.
Because it's him. And I mean, he did a wonderful job. And just like I remember just watching like all the documentary stuff about Scream and how just like how much the cast and crew love working with him and how like nice of a man he is. And even like with the with the newest Scream coming out, like how they were all just like, no, like we can't, like they feel like as if he's like a father to them, right? And they're like, and you know how difficult it was to even say yes to a Scream 5 without him. And just like the respect, they have so much respect for him, and I just think that it speaks volumes of the kind of person he was, just like on set. And like even like, you know, I mean, you never know what's real in Hollywood. It can be a little fake.
Yeah,
but I mean, just like watching the way like they laugh together reading scripts and all this stuff, like you can't really fake that too much. And I love seeing, you know, a relationship the relationship he has with the crew, because it just makes them just so, you know, so in love with it. And, you know, I feel like, you know, if it could be a rarity to find as well. So like with Neve Campbell saying like, if Neve is, I mean, if Wes Craven is involved, I'm not doing it. And
she did
she said no for so long, and then she said it for so long, and then I think with the new directors doing Scream 5, like the amount of respect they had, she's like, you know what, you respect him so much, like I do, that I can agree to this, or like they honor him so well,
right?
That they, and I think that's wonderful. I think it just shows the impact he had on not only the movie but like the lives of those actors. Yeah,
he's known as one of the nicest, I think, film directors, which is funny, right? Because he's Wes Craven, he makes these scary movies. I've like everything I've heard, like all the documentaries I've watched, like he's just one of the most kind mans in the industry. So sad to lose him in 2015 at age of 76. I didn't even know he was sick. I remember when that broke that day in August of 2015. I just like, I mean, I almost cried. I didn't even know he was sick. I was like, what?
Oh yeah. Well, I
And
feel like it's so popular now, is not knowing what celebrities are sick. I mean, you think like, yo, they're a celebrity, everyone knows their business, but sometimes you just don't. And it's yeah,
yeah, and
it's a sad day.
what was really strange was that semester I was teaching a couple college classes, and one of them was the films of Wes Craven was my class. And it had started 2 weeks before his death. And I came in that Monday and I just kind of sat there and I talked to the students. It was like an English class where we were doing writing projects, and then I would bring in clips from the films of a director or an actor. I did that a few times, and that semester I had chosen Wes Craven. And so yeah, that most of the students weren't even aware, and I'm like trying to hold it together. But yeah, just he means a lot to me. I worked for his company in the spring of 07, my final
cool.
semester of college. It was called Midnight Pictures / Wes Craven Pictures or production or something. And I worked for his company twice a week for 4 months. He came into the office one time, and I'll never forget. I was manning the phones. I was on the phone with someone. The door opens. Usually,
Not Ghostface.
It wasn't Ghostface. Usually, the door would open. It'd be one of the assistants or somebody delivering something like mail. And I looked up, and there he. I was like, oh, and he was like, I was like, is my assistant here? And I'm like, hello, Mr. Craven, how may I help you? And I didn't get a chance to really talk to him there, but then that was the early part of the year where The Hills Have Eyes 2 was coming out, which he had participated in as a screenwriter and producer, I think. And so they had a premiere, and I was invited because I was working for his company. They invited me to the cast and crew premiere, and I got to go up and say hi to him, and I talked to him for a little bit, and he was so kind. And I went up to him. I'm like, I work for your company. And he's like, oh, tell me your name. What do you do? And like I told him about the college. So it was like, that was a cool experience. I'll never forget that moment. That was really cool, just to say hi to him and talk to him for a little bit. But yeah, he's been a part of my life for so long. And I mean, it when I think about like, what's my favorite Wes Craven movie? Because Scream and Nightmare are so close to me. Like they're so like, they're very different movies. Nightmare is much more of like a terrifying horror film, and where Scream has elements of comedy and thriller. And but I feel like even in his lesser projects, like you can always find something to love in his movies. I don't know how many Wes Craven movies you've seen. He made a lot of films. Like he's got like at least 18 to 20 films he directed. Something like that. I mean, I've seen them all.
Oh wow! I mean, of course, all the Screams, Nightmare on Elm Street, Hills Have Eyes. What was that one? It came out in like 2010, maybe.
Oh yeah, one's rough.
Even after Scream 4. But yeah, it
was My Soul to Take had I remember it had a great opening scene. It had a good opening, and the rest of the movie I was like, what is happening here? Yeah, I'm happy that's not the last one. I'm happy he did Scream 4 after that.
Absolutely, yeah. I was very happy about that, because I saw that and I was like, I really want to like it.
Yeah,
I really do.
I feel like Cursed from 2005. Did you see Cursed, the werewolf movie? Mm-hmm. That is really bad, and I wish that they had just made like they made that movie like 4 times. You know that?
Oh my god!
They kept rewriting it, kept reshooting scenes over and over and over and over. And I guess the very first version was like a hard R-rated werewolf movie that the studio, they wanted to tamper down. They wanted it to be more for teens and PG-13. And I always wish we could see that first version in some form, because I think that would have been more of a real Wes Craven movie. Kevin Williamson also wrote Cursed. So if you're a Scream fan, you should probably at least look at it, because it's the last like non-Scream property that Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven collaborated on, but it's not very good. The final movie is not great, but it's like as a Scream super fan, I think you owe it to yourself to at least look at this other film that they collaborated on.
I have it down. Oh, Jesse Eisenberg. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's got a good cast. Christina Ricci's the lead.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a mess.
Milo Ventimiglia, like I'm sold.
Yeah, he plays a gay character. Milo plays a gay character in that movie.
God. Like I'm gonna go watch it right now. Like bye.
Like 2003, 2004, Milo is like really cute in it. Yeah. So geez, I'm just like going down the the rabbit hole here of different things. Just a couple final things. Do you know why they changed the title to Scream from Scary Movie?
I remember. I know it was a very very last minute decision.
They were still shooting.
I
It wasn't
can't.
like they
Oh, okay.
wrapped. They were nearing the end of production when Bob Weinstein said we're changing the title. So it wasn't because that line that Matthew Lillard's Stu has when he says it's a scream, baby. They added that like towards the end of production when they knew that the title was changing.
Oh, I did not know that.
So
Okay.
it wasn't like a month before the movie came out. They were still shooting.
Oh, okay. I know some misinformation then. I don't. I mean, I guess I don't know. I feel like, oh, was it to save like space on something like written
Oh, okay.
out? That's in my head. I was like, oh, maybe they wanted it to be short and sweet, so that for like design wise. But uh, I please tell me, because I would love to know now if I'm even close.
Well, the original idea, I think they thought Scary Movie, it sounded like it could be a spoof or a comedy, and they wanted to convey the fact that it's a mix of terror and comedy, and that's why they went with Scream. I don't know if it was about just keeping the title shorter. I just think Scary Movie, they weren't sure if that conveyed to the audience that this is a genuine thriller. It's not something funny, because some of those directors they went to, just looking at the title, they thought it was like, reading it at the beginning, they thought it was a comedy. It was like some sort of like a satire on horror, in which it has some of that. But
Yeah.
Craven was the one who got it. He said, no, this is a scary film, but it has elements of comedy and satire and things. Some directors thought it was supposed to be like, the tone of it was supposed to be funny all the way through. And that, I think Bob Weinstein thought that the title Scary Movie might tell audiences that this is goofier than it actually is. So everybody hated the title Scream, which I understand.
Really?
Oh, Craven, Williamson, they were like, you got to be kidding me. They're calling it Scream. And then later, everybody was like, oh, I can't imagine it being called anything else. But I kind of get that. Like, imagine like you're nearing the end of production and they say, we're calling it Scream. I could see you, like, your first reaction being like, no, that doesn't sound right. But
I feel like it's very meta for them, because I mean, like, listen, like all those other movies, I mean, everything. I mean, actually, like, kind of related to Halloween almost. I mean, Halloween, like, if I heard the movie Halloween, I wouldn't even know what to think of what. I was just like, oh, is that like the story of Halloween? So I mean, it makes it. And now I hear the word Halloween, I mean, of course, it's season, but I go,
yeah,
on my think of the movie, oh, horror, scary, creepy, yeah. But like, I feel like, the names, like back then, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Hills Have Eyes, they have like these cool, mysterious names that have like these eerie tones, and Scream is just like Scream done.
Scream.
But it is very I guess progressive in that term. We're just gonna make them short and sweet, and it makes it like, and then like, now movies like Hereditary and Midsommar, like this one title, one word titles, and now, although those all becoming iconic now, I mean, I can't even think of a movie. Well, I mean, I guess like Ready or Not, just think of the new directors as well, like, where there's like a clever, catchy title. I feel like so many horror movies are going in the direction of just something basic, and that's it.
What's the one coming up? The Black Phone.
The Black Phone, yeah. People think it looks great. I don't think it looks too great. Ethan Hawke I'm sure he's going to do great in it, but
I'm intrigued by it. I saw the trailer before Halloween Kills. They did not show the trailer for Scream before Halloween Kills in my theater, Andrew, and I couldn't believe it.
No.
I'm like, are you serious?
Okay, so
big crowd, no Scream trailer. I'm like, really? Okay. Good job.
I would have left. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, this movie isn't good anyway. I'm just not gonna leave.
That's okay. I watched it like 30 times at home, so I pretty much know the trailer by heart, so it's fine.
Oh, I do too. Well, I know my friend wanted us to wait. He's like, let's wait to see the Scream trailer until Halloween Kills, and I was just like,
yeah, what if it's not?
No. I was like, one, what if they don't show it? they showed it in my theater, luckily, but I was just like, I'm not waiting. I was like, I cannot. I was like, I've been waiting for this. I had a dream about the trailer the night before. So I was like, I have to watch this.
I think I might have had one too.
That's how invested I was. Because I watched, because they were playing Scream 25th anniversary at the movie theater. And so I went to go see that. And they had, it was cute because instead of previews, they had like this whole like 15-minute long little documentary clip of just like the making of Scream and like the behind the scenes stuff, which is so fun to watch. And then it pops up. Scream 5 trailer drops tomorrow. And I was like,
oh, they didn't show it?
No, and I was
that's
like, we're
stupid.
not going to see it. And I was like, why can't we be the first ones to go see the trailer? Because we're watching.
I thought that's why they were doing that.
I did too. But then I was like, oh, it comes out tomorrow. I was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah.
Well, that would have been this
all day. I was just like, okay, I'm going to see the Scream trailer tonight. I know they have to do it. Like, what? Because they're only showing 2 showings of the movie. So it wasn't like they were going to be playing it all weekend. So I was like, oh, they have to have it. And they didn't. Now I woke up the next day and was like immediately on YouTube on my phone. It's like, where is it? Like, it has to be here.
The trailer for the new Scream showed a lot, and I'm like, I kind of don't want to see anything else before January. I'm nervous that in December they'll release like a longer trailer. I'm like, I don't want to see anything else. It was already given away a little, like that last scene of Sydney coming in the house. I'm like, whoa, this is probably the end. Like, let's not show too much here.
Well, and so I know they shot like 4 different versions of this movie
of
the new one, and I actually joined this little what is it called? It's an app. It is called Discotech. I think that's what. Oh no, the Discord. Sorry.
Okay.
And the directors were having a little Q&A, and I was listening to it, and people were all discussing the movie. And I was reading stuff afterward, and they said like the trailer is very deceptive. Apparently, they said what you see in the trailer might not be. So they I feel like they pulled like a Paranormal Activity 3. Because in that trailer, they show so much stuff and not one clip.
None of it's in the
trailer. None of it's in the movie. And so I feel like they might be kind of doing something like that, where they're going to be showing, they're showing you stuff, but it's not going to be in there. So yeah, because I know they filmed so many different versions of it because they want to throw people off.
Yeah.
Also, just have like so many different options. So I feel like I think we might.
Yeah.
What we might not get.
Well, it's like the end of the Halloween 2018 trailer. You see them you see Laurie and Michael having a knife fight outside. That was not in the finished film. And then in Halloween Kills, that trailer ends with her walking down the hallway with a knife saying, "I'm coming for you, Michael." That was not in the movie. So I'm used to that now. It's like sometimes they'll end the trailer with something that's not even in the final film. So part of that I struggle with that because you're waiting for that moment and then it never happens. You're like, oh, okay.
Never mind. Now Paranormal Activity 3 did that third movie of Paranormal Activity did a not too great job at wrapping that movie up the way it should have been wrapped up.
Right.
I was like, wait, the whole house was to catch on fire. They show in the trailer, but also that's what happened throughout the history of these people.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen in the movie. And I was like, that's like a huge part of the whole franchise is this fire. And they didn't even do it. And I was just like a little disappointed in that part. But sometimes it's kind of fun to be like completely twisted because it's fun to like still be shocked because like I've watched that Scream 5 trailer so many times now, and I'm just like, and then I need to stop. I really do need to stop.
I don't watch the first part anymore. Like the part of the girl getting attacked, I just go to. I have to listen to it at least once a week. I have to listen to Nev Campbell saying Sidney Prescott. Of course, I have a gun. Which is the best line of the trailer.
Oh my God. I mean, when I was listening to that little Q&A with the directors, they're like, well, people already love that line. And now,
don't cut that line.
The thread on the messages was just like, that line is already like iconic. Like, it's so good. Like, to me, I mean, like, Scream 4, I love the you forgot the first rule of remakes, Joe. Don't fuck with the original. I'm like, I remember when I watched that in theaters, I was just like, yes, it's like that's exactly what you need to say. I was like, best line in the entire movie.
That was the loudest reaction I personally have ever had in any movie I've ever seen in the theater. Because I was so nervous that they were gonna kill off Sydney at the end of Scream 4, especially when she gets stabbed and I'm like, oh my God, is this happening? By her, by that chick? Like, really? Come on. And when she says that line, which was so well written and so well delivered by Neve Campbell, I literally I didn't even know I was doing it. I just stood up and I just shouted, yes. And I don't do that. So I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. So now I have to do it again. In Scream 5, I have to be nervous for Sydney again. I don't think they're going to kill her off. I'm very, very, very doubtful. I don't
think they will. No, I don't think they will either. I think like she's meant to survive. She's meant to survive all this.
At this point, people would hate on the movie at this point if they killed her off. So I don't think they would go that way.
I don't think they will either. I think like that's part of it is like one, respecting Wes Craven's decision. Like he wants her to live.
Yeah.
No matter what. So to kill her off, I think would just go completely against what his plan would be for her character. So I think she's safe. I think she's gonna kick some ass. And now I don't know, Dewey and Gale, they're up in the air. So
Dewey and Gale are always up in the air. Like
especially Dewey.
I was almost 100% convinced they were going to kill off Gale or Dewey in 4. I thought, okay, the core trios made it through the first 3. I kind of feel like, I think Sydney will be okay, but I feel like one of the other 2 might go. And when Gale gets stabbed halfway through 4, I went, oh my God, okay, this is it. They're killing her. But no. So I don't know. We'll see. Like, I feel like Dewey, of the 3, I feel like the audience at this point in 5, I think we could be okay if Dewey died. I think that could, if it was like a heroic death at the end or something, I think we could get behind that. But I think,
I think Dewey dying. I think they'll make it very heroic. I feel like he is. I feel like, well, one, I mean, just like looking at that trailer, I know we were probably discussing it later, but like looking at that trailer, like it looks as if he and Gail are no longer together.
Yeah.
Because it looks like he's kind of living like almost like in a trailer or like something, because his house is very old looking. So I feel like maybe, after 4, I mean, I feel like he failed miserably as as protecting all these kids, and that just sent him in a spiral, which is completely understandable. But I like the idea of that, because I feel like that's definitely a new take, because I mean, he's always been up and going, and he's just like ready to help whoever, but he feels defeated at this point, and I feel like he's gonna look for some redemption.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was a sheriff in the 4th one, and all that horrible thing happened, and I think they're really gonna really dive into the characters in this new one, of just like their emotions, and just maybe even make it it looks more serious than the first 4. It looks like it's gonna, well, I know the 4th one was actually pretty serious. This one looks like it's gonna be much more, less comedy, more emotional distress, and like really diving into the characters and like what they've become.
So you want to hear something mind-blowing for our listeners? We're recording this at the end of October. This episode is dropping. I'm trying to drop it close to the 25th anniversary of Scream. This will be dropping on December 14th, which will be 1 month away from the January 14th release of Scream. When this actually comes out, Andrew, will be 1 month away.
1 month away. I cannot wait. I'm trying to get tickets to the premiere.
The premiere. Very cool.
So like, now there is this thing called 1 Iota. I've gone to many movie premieres because of it. It's just like they're free tickets to movie premieres and all these other things. So I got to go like It Chapter 2.
Cool.
Curse of La Llorona, Godzilla movies, and like a few other ones, and it's pretty easy to get tickets. I'm checking it all the time. I'm gonna check it for like, and like in the November and December, I'm just checking that thing at 24/7 to see if Scream comes up. Because if it does, I'm taking a day off work. I'm going to it. I do not care. Like that is
gonna rub shoulders with Sydney.
Goal. Like we will be in the same
with
room.
Nev.
Because you usually get to do like the red carpets. You get to go beyond, like look at the people on the red carpet, and like sometimes you get like free T-shirts, and you always get like a free drink, and it's always like such a fun and little event. So I'm praying that this world will have its shit together a little bit more, and I will get to live my fantasy and just be Because like I think, unfortunately, my Scream 4 was the first Scream movie I saw in theaters.
Right.
Unfortunately, my theater experience was not good. Um,
Oh, okay.
there was well, I mean, there was hardly anyone in the theater, which was very disappointing. It was opening weekend. Uh, I went at like 4 p.m., which is also a weird time, and the only time we could go. I was too young to see it, but my sister had to take me. So my
Okay.
sister took me and my friend to go see it, and this woman brought her like little 5-year-old kids to the movie.
Oh, like right next to you or behind you?
These little they were in the very front.
Oh, in front of
So
you.
I was just like, why are these kids watching this movie? And then they would like start making noises every now and then. And I was like, shut it up. I was like, this is iconic for me. This is not what I want. Now I adore them. I mean, like it was still just like I was still extremely pleased by it. I was very nervous about the movie. Uh, but I was just like, oh, I wish I'd had like a fun audience or like, no 5-year-olds in the movie theater would have
Mhm.
been great as well. Because that's never, oh my gosh. That happened with me with A Quiet Place Part 1. The man
Oh,
next
okay.
to me, it was him and like his 4 or 5 kids, all under the age of 10. Some of them are like little kids. And as soon as the movie started, he had a phone call and he took it sitting right next to me. A
Oh.
quiet place where it's supposed to be quiet.
I remember my experience with Quiet Place was strange in that everybody was dead quiet. You couldn't hear a pin drop. There was nothing. Like it was great.
I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous. You know what? When I saw the second one a few months ago or whatever, uh, this guy behind us was talking a little too much, and this guy behind me told him to be quiet, and then they got into the whole little thing. And I was like, "What is it about these movies that like I never get to like experience it?"
You
And
would
it
at
was
the
like
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
it was like the first like 5 minutes in, and I was just like, the first 5 minutes in of seeing part one and part two have been ruined by annoying straight men. Honestly, that's
There
just
you
what
go.
happens.
Well,
Uh,
if you don't get into the premiere, I will cross my fingers. However, it is that you see Scream 5 in a setting where you don't have people bothering
oh
you.
yeah, I'm gonna see it Friday night at like 7 p.m. That's like I think that's like prime time to go see the movie. So
All
that's
right.
the plan B.
All right, so let's get back to Scream. We're an hour in. We haven't really talked about the movie yet. So we will. I promise our listeners are like, what is happening, you guys? We will get there. So before we get into like specific scenes from the movie, I did want to just touch on casting a little bit. So we talked about Drew and how she had this epiphany, like I should be the first girl at the beginning, which I think really makes the movie what it is. I mean, I think she would have been great as Sydney, but can't really picture it now. Like it just doesn't
No.
doesn't work. Did you know Nev Campbell was hesitant to do the movie because she had just done the movie The Craft, and that was a horror film, and she didn't want to do a second horror film back to back like that. The only reason she decided to do it was Wes Craven and the fact that it was the
Yeah.
lead. She wasn't the lead in The Craft. She was one of four girls, and because it was the lead role, Nev Campbell decided to sign on. She, of course, was very popular at the time on the show Party of Five. That will have been kind of like, it's funny, Party of Five started airing in 1994. Friends started airing in 1994. So both Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox had these two hit shows that were like nearing the end of their second season at the time.
Yeah.
So that's how Nev Campbell came to do it. I guess her audition was I think I've even seen her audition. I think it's on YouTube or on the DVD or something. There is footage of her auditioning for Scream, and it's a really good audition. And then, did you know that they auditioned Brooke Shields and Janine Garofalo for Gale Weathers?
You know what? I could see Brooke Shields doing it for
Brooke
sure.
Shields, yeah, it's funny.
I
Yeah,
could see it.
Brooke Shields might have been good in like 1996.
Uh-huh.
She's really great in a 1996 movie called Freeway with Reese Witherspoon. Brooke
Okay.
Shields has like a cool supporting role in that. Like, yeah, she could have been good. I can't really picture Garofalo. She's a little bit
No.
too funny. I don't know if she would have pulled
Mm-hmm.
off the more serious side to Gale towards the end of the movie. So they did not go to Courtney Cox. Courtney Cox pursued the film. They obviously did not think of her for this because she was on Friends, and Courtney Cox, when she got a hold of the project, the script, she was like, I want this role. I want to play a bitch. That's what she said.
And she does great. She
So I
does
don't know if she had to
fantastic.
audition for Wes Craven, like how she ultimately came to be I'm happy it worked out because I could see like, okay, we already have the star of Party of Five in the lead. Do we want the star of Friends? comedy series. Like we want that, like a person from that show here. I mean, I could see the trepidation at the time. And Courtney Cox has never played a role like this. So it's like, what? Like, I could see them kind of like going against that, but glad that they didn't, because she's great in the movie. I love her in this.
Oh, she's so good.
Like she really, you know, she really goes for it. Like she's not like, she doesn't hold back at all in that character, especially towards the beginning. And then Skeet Ulrich obviously also had a great audition. Wes Craven didn't feel this way about him, but a lot of the people on the production, they thought he kind of looked like a young Johnny Depp from Nightmare on Elm Street, which was Johnny Depp's first movie. In the commentary, Wes Craven said that's not why we chose him. I mean, I guess you could kind of see that, but it was about his talent and his performance and his how well he auditioned, and he thought he had a great look, and that's why he came aboard. Did you know David Arquette auditioned for Billy?
Really?
That's who he went in for. The audition didn't go well, and I guess he like said to Craven, he said, "Is it possible I could audition for Dewey?" Dewey was written as a much hunkier, kind of like muscled guy, like a bigger guy, and David Arquette didn't look that, but Craven kind of was like, okay, because I think David Arquette was a little too old to play Billy. Obviously looks a little older, so they decided to take a chance and have him audition to play Dewey, and it just worked out. So
yeah,
if David Arquette had not spoken up, if he had just auditioned for Billy and then went home, like, I don't know what would happen there.
No, I mean, I wouldn't want a hunky Dewey. Like, no, yeah. I like the average. Like, he is like, the best thing I do is that he's so brave. Like he's not like an intimidating guy at all. He's very sweet and he's very protective and he's very heroic. But like he said, like he's not a big guy, and it makes me like him so much more. Right. It also makes him funny. It makes him funnier in general, anyway. But
yeah, Craven appreciated. He's like, oh, this is like a softer, kind of funnier version of the character that we hadn't really been thinking about. But I think that's partly why the movie works so well, especially with that character. If that character was just a straight, just like hunky, charismatic guy from beginning to end, I think that would have made the movie suffer. I like that he's a little bit nerdier and he doesn't always say the right thing. Like that, I like that character in the movie.
It like, if he was, this hot cop, I wouldn't really, I wouldn't care if he had died. Probably, I've been like, oh yeah, like his character, I was like, in general, that character probably would have died, like in a horror movie. Yeah. But like,
he was supposed to die.
Yeah,
Dewey was supposed to die. And on the last, when they were shooting that last scene with Courtney Cox, Craven went, guys, just in case the audience really likes this character of Dewey, let's just real quick, let's just grab a quick shot of him being loaded into an ambulance, just in case. We don't have to use it, just in case. And then a character that would go on to be in all the sequels. It's very funny that like he was almost dead. But I guess even without that shot, I guess they could have just brought him back in 2 and just, I mean, it would have been okay. I wouldn't have ruined it. But I do like that we get that shot of him being loaded in at the end. And then Roger Jackson, who voices Ghostface, he's the voice in the new one too, right? I mean, he's been doing it. He was just a local person. They shot this in Santa Rosa, California, which is very strange, Andrew. This is totally coincidence. Well, I'm like, this is dropping in December. We're recording at the end of October. My birthday is coming up here at the end of October. I'm going to Santa Rosa, Healdsburg area for a wine tasting weekend for my birthday weekend, where they shot Scream.
Oh my god! Well, you better go to like.
I've never been to that area before, and doing my this trip has been planned for weeks. Doing my research these last few nights, I'm like, oh, it was shot where I'm going next week. I didn't even know. I knew it was shot in Northern California somewhere. I didn't know it was the specific area that I'm actually going to for the very first time in my life. So I might have to like break away from the wineries and at least try to go see a couple of the sets or the.
Oh my god, absolutely.
Like I know, like I think the houses are all still standing right from the movie.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I read online some of them are like you don't have access to some of them. It's not like you can just drive up like you can in Pasadena for the Halloween locations. I think like some of them are like behind gates and stuff, but I'll see if I at least I would love to see at least a couple of the shooting locations. Would be cool. But Roger Jackson was from that area. He was just like a local hire. And their intention was they were going to have him do it, and then they would loop it later in post with someone else. But he was so good. Craven recognized, oh, this guy's perfect, that they just kept him all the way through. The actors never saw him. Many of the scenes we watch in Scream, they're actually talking to him in real time, but the actors never got to meet him. I mean, I'm assuming at some point they did. I'm thinking after 4 movies, did Nev Campbell eventually get to meet him? Like, I would hope so.
I hope so.
But yeah, he would just like be in the shadows off to the side with the real cell phone and like talk to them and do the dialogue and stuff. And so I always thought that was really interesting. So let's get into filming. It was shot between April and June 1996. It had a budget of $15 million. The Weinstein brothers wanted it to film in Vancouver to save money, but Craven was the one who said, no, I want to shoot this in the United States. I want this to have an American feel. So they ended up in Northern California, in the Healdsburg, Santa Rosa area. There was a high school that they wanted to use for the high school scenes, but there was like a board have you heard this story, that they voted no. They insisted on reading the script, and it was so violent. They said, we do not accept this. We are not going to allow you to film here. So that's why at the end credits of Scream, it says no thanks whatsoever to the board of the Santa Rosa High School.
I never knew that little last part where they had.
Have you seen at the end?
I learned about how they the high school they said they couldn't do it because they're like, oh, this is too violent, we don't want this. But I never knew I'm gonna have to watch the end credits then and go.
It's the only movie I know of that has a no thanks whatsoever to credit. So at the very end of the credits, it says thanks to. It lists some people and some places, and then it says no thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa High School or board or whatever. And then it's like that's it.
So
then it's
awesome.
and then it just shows like the MPA, and then that's it.
Like, make some money. Like, come on.
It would have made money for their little town, that area, and it came down to like 5 people. Like, everybody was on board. The students, the teachers, like the administration. It was like just a board of these 5 people who insisted on reading it just to give them the go ahead, and they said, "Oh, absolutely not. Like, we're not going to let you film here." So they had to quickly find a second location to film elsewhere. I guess the high school scenes are at a place called the Sonoma Community Center. It was like an abandoned, or like it used to be an elementary school that they fixed up to look like a high school for the finished movie. So there's that. And then, of course, the Ghostface mask, there was controversy behind the mask.
No.
They were not everybody was on board with the mask. Bob Weinstein was like, I don't know, it looks a little funny. Like, I don't know if this is going to make the movie scary. And early on, they were looking at dailies. The studio was concerned that the mask wasn't scary enough. And it was a back and forth. There was like a threat of maybe firing Craven. Like, there was there was some tension the first couple weeks. But I guess they really quickly cut together the Drew Barrymore opening sequence. And Bob Weinstein watched it and said, okay, I think we're going to be okay.
I think, if I remember correctly, like, they used a lot of the the prototypes of the mask throughout the entire movie, where like the mask looks a little different here, a little different there, because it was just like prototypes they had.
Yeah.
Because, like, I remember, like, even the one that, like, the principal puts on, like, it's much shorter, it's much more like, and his eyes are much like curved and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believe those were all just like prototypes, and they just used them. They're like, oh, let's just throw them around, and for like the closing stuff, we'll use the official ones and stuff. But yeah, the mask always looked different throughout the first movie and a handful of shots, because it was just, I guess, different styles they were trying to work out.
Yeah. Do you know how they found the mask, like where it came from?
I do not. I always assumed it was, part of, like, the Scream painting, because that's what I feel like.
It does kind of look like that, right?
I always thought that.
So Kevin Williamson's script, it just said mask killer. It didn't specify what it looked like. And they realized early on, they said it can't just be a mask, because then we would know it's, we know it's a man. Like, we would see the build of the actor. Like, it has to be something that covers their whole body. So they were looking for something like that. And I guess it was Marianne Madalena, Wes Craven's producing partner, who I also got to meet when I worked at their company. She's really great.
Oh, cool.
She discovered the Ghostface mask hanging from a post inside the house, previously used for a film called Shadow of a Doubt. They found it was like just a regular like Halloween costume made by a company called Fun World. And so they were like, oh, well, we'll just like design an alternate version of this so we don't actually have to purchase the rights from Fun World. But they tried different versions and none of them looked as good as the original. So eventually they did approach Fun World and they gained permission for use of the mask. I'd be curious to know, like, you think they like Fun World could have asked for like points on the movie or something, and any further sequels, they would have made a lot of, because I don't think it was a very big costume company by any means. They're over here going,
No,
oh,
definitely
great.
not.
So we gave them permission, and then it becomes this iconic horror franchise.
Makes hundreds of millions of dollars over 25 years.
Yeah. But so it eventually worked out. Everybody was on board with the mask. Once everyone saw a rough cut of the Drew Barrymore sequence, they went, okay, this is going to work. This will be fine. But I could see like on the set, like just shot by shot, you could kind of look at the mask and be like, this could look kind of weird. Like I could see them being a little nervous, like before the music's in, before it's cut really well, you could kind of think, oh, this might come across as a little silly, the costume of the killer, you know, but it works out. And it makes the movie what it is.
I like what you just mentioned, how like, you know, it's a full body costume. It's not like,
right.
You know, you can't tell the sex of them. It might be a guy, it could be a girl. Like, we have no idea. And I never thought like yeah, thinking of like Michael Myers and Jason and everyone. It's like you see their body and you're like, oh, well, you know it's a man. You can tell.
Right.
But with this, I mean, and as you know, throughout all the movies, there are female killers. So I never thought of it in that way. Where like, yeah, it does conceal their complete identity. You have no idea really who could be under there.
Yeah,
which makes it way more mysterious, way more fun, because then you can't like, oh, well, look at like how tall they are. Look, there's no breast, so it has to be a man, and that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. As we get into finally our thoughts on the movie and kind of going through it. One of the things that kind of makes this franchise stand out is that it's not just a horror film. It also is a mystery, because when you watch the Halloween, Friday the 13th films, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know who the killer is. But in these, part of the fun of all of these movies is guessing who is the killer. We don't know until the end, you know?
Yeah.
Scream works as well as it does because it's scary, it's funny, but it's also a mystery. And you're like, who is it? Who's the killer? And the first time around, we don't know. It's going to be two, right? I remember that was a big surprise when I saw it. I'm like, oh, it's two people. Okay. Like, you don't really think that on the first go around. You think, oh, it'll just be one killer at the end with a motive and all of that. So I think that's another reason why I love this movie, is that it's also a mystery. And going into the new Scream in January, who knows who the killer is going to be? Like, it'll be kind of fun. It'll be fun to guess who it is. All right, so let's get into the movie. What do we think about this opening sequence with Drew Barrymore? Why is this scene so famous? As you are dressed as Casey Becker.
As I
what is so great about this opening 13-minute sequence, however long it is?
Callie O'Malley. She is being a little brat. Well, I think first off, I think it's so when they start discussing the horror movies on the phone, you automatically know, oh, this is a world where like this is not a fake world. This is the real life. This is not Nightmare on Elm Street world or Jason world. Like, this is officially like present day. Which just like completely puts you into the set of, oh, I'm watching what could really happen. I mean, oh my God, there's just so many things to say about this opening scene. So my best friend and I, she did not like scary movies, and so I was trying to introduce her to them. And I mean, I've known Scream for so long. The whole Drew Barrymore being killed off in the opening was never a big deal to me because I always knew about it.
Right.
But my friend didn't know that, and while we were watching it, and this was probably like in 2014, we were watching this. She was just like watching. She's like, "Oh my God, how is Drew Barrymore going to get out of this? Like, what happens in this? Like, how does she like get away?" And I was like, "You'll see." And then she gets killed off, and she's like, "Wait, what?" I was just like, "Yeah." I was like, "No, she's gone." And she was like, "Oh wow, like okay, like this is," and now she loves them as much as I do. Because she was just like blown away by that, and it was so fun to see like a reaction to that because I never had that because I just always knew about it, and then seeing someone who knew nothing about it and for them to like witness it and they're like shocked. I was like, oh, that must have what it been had like in the theater, and at the time you're like, oh my god, like she's gone. I just think that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Just I mean,
audiences then didn't know what to do with that. I think it's like, and you're like, oh, we thought this was like going to be the heroine of the movie, and then they're just dead, and then we're on to the next scene, and you're like, oh, geez, okay, anything can happen here. Anybody can die.
exactly. All bets are off, as they say.
Yeah, but it's so well done, this opening scene. First off, it's really fresh with the talk of other horror films. That was brand new at the time, right? That, I mean, maybe some other horror films mentioned another horror movie, but it's almost unheard of. So this was like taking the genre in a new direction in that way. But I just love the slow build up. Drew Barrymore is smiling and she's like, oh, this guy's flirting with me. This guy's being kind of annoying, but I'll go with it. And then just the way that Craven just keeps ratcheting up the tension every moment, like it gets more and more serious until she's like, oh my God, this person might be actually on my property. And
Blondie.
Love it. I love the use of the phone, how she never drops it, even when she's dying and being dragged along the grass. She's holding the phone as her parents are talking into the other phone to her. And I love the use of the blue TV, always very eerie. I just love that, like how that's put into a lot of the shots. And
well, I feel like static TV would have been the idea.
Poltergeist.
Yeah. But I was just like, yeah, blue TV though. That's that I never quite thought of it in that way, but I do. It does add just a little something instead of static, because like static I think is a little too cliche, and Scream is going against the cliche, and so that definitely that works well together for sure.
There's so many cool touches. The popcorn and how that's when she's not attending to it. The house starts getting smoky, and the way that plays into when the parents come in, and just all these little touches like the swing and the very the second shot of the movie, you see the house and the swing is going back and forth, like just all these little things.
And then she's hung by it at the end.
She's hung by the tree.
And they use it. Yeah, they do a lot of little foreshadowing parts that I love. Where they show something, you're like, what's the point of that, and what's that, and then 5 minutes later, oh, that's why they had made this noise or showed that little swing or something like that. It's so good.
It introduces the idea of movie trivia to live. You're going to answer this question correctly, so it kind of gets the audience into it. Like the audience is also trying to guess the correct answer, right? I'm sure a lot of audience members, who is the killer in Halloween? Everyone's like Michael Myers. And then what's so great about that question is that then that leads into who's the killer in Friday the 13th. Your brain thinks Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason. So most everybody would go Jason. And the way she does, she's like so confident about it. And you're this guy knows his stuff. This is not just this is not just any crazed killer. There's somebody who knows their movie trivia.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then her boyfriend gets cut open. That was another shot that was cut from the R-rated version, and the NC-17 version, unedited of the movie. We see his in a wide shot, you see his intestines spill out onto the ground. That is not in the final movie, but you can see it in the unedited cut, which added 30 seconds of gore. So that seems really creepy. But you think she's going to get away until that lovely wide shot of her running in slow motion and then him stabbing her. That shot lasts for 10 to 15 seconds. It's a long shot. Yeah. And you're like, oh. And that was the shot that the MPA wanted cut from the movie. They thought it was too intense. Oh, and Craven said we only shot that's the only take we did. It's the only take of him stabbing her. We have to use it. And so they finally relented and said, okay.
Well,
I'm sure he shot other stuff.
Because I mean that I can also hear the music in my head right now.
Yeah.
like when she's like slipping, and I'm just like, oh, I mean, it's like, oh my god, like she's almost there, like she's so close. And then like, I mean, it's so doing, yeah, she's gonna slip and fall, and it's so real and so like it is. I mean, it's hard to watch for sure. Just like this scene, I mean, she got so close, and like sometimes like slow motion shots can just be like super cheesy, but the way they did it was just like it was so good. Because I mean, everything had been so fast paced before that, and now you just like she doesn't make it. I remember the scene. What gets me every single time I watch it is when she calls out for her mom and she can't, like, because she had just been choked and she can't say it, which is just such a huge, like, I think nightmare people have, especially like I've had them before too, where like you're trying to call out for help but you just can't, and you're so close and no one can hear you. To me, that's the scariest part of the entire opening, because it just
it really makes it feel real.
Oh yeah.
Drew Barrymore really disappears into this role. I really don't, when I watch Scream, I'm not like I'm watching Drew Barrymore for these opening 10 minutes. Like I really do, like it's the wig and her performance. Like you really just believe her as this person who has just the most tragic thing happen to her. And I think what really humanizes her is that ending where she's coming around the house, and we see in that wide shot, the parents are walking up the steps of the porch, and you see Casey in the background slowly coming around. I mean, it's literally seconds they would have seen her, but they're busy paying attention to the flowers.
Yeah, they look great, don't they? Like, shut the hell up.
And then her just trying to say mom. That's done better here than it is at the end of Halloween 2, when Jamie Lee Curtis is out in the parking lot and she's trying to scream for Sam Loomis, and she's like, help. And then as soon as the door is shut, she screams at help. I think it works better at the beginning of Scream. I love the way, and I love the touch of she takes the mask off and has no reaction. That's a really chilling moment too. Like she knows it's over. She's going to die. Her final move is to take the mask off of who's killing her, and she just kind of shrugs. Like there's no reason for this person to be doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we have to wait till the end to find out who it is. And then just, oh my God, just them like talking to her, the parents talking to her over the phone, and you're hearing like the guy's voice, and then the mom's scream is what a way to call the movie Scream. Of course we have to call it Scream. Just the mom's scream at the beginning is so chilling too.
I feel like I'm assuming they just like brought women in, were like, just scream, do a horrible scream, and like that was because her scream is fantastic. It's so good. It's so like, it's such a clean scream, I guess. It's just like if you think of like a horror, like if I had like a audio file of a woman screaming, I feel like that would be it would be her.
It's not just a horror movie scream. It's like a mom screaming for her child. It's tough. That I think is really well done. There's not a wrong beat in that opening. It's just so beautifully done, like the right pacing, the right ratcheting up of tension all the way to the end. And then it cuts to black after we see her body hanging from the tree, and we go right into another suspense moment.
Yep.
Of Neve Campbell, Sydney on her computer, and then she hears a noise from her window. Like you can't even catch a breath. We're on to the next. That could have been this movie, right? It could have just been like one kill scene after another the whole time. But then we get into the introduction of Sidney Prescott. What do we think of Sidney Prescott in this first movie? Like, why is her character so key to the success of Scream, do you think?
I mean, I think it's because like, well, one, Campbell is like a terrific actress.
Great actor.
But she is like, the trauma she has already experienced in her life is just like enough to make really anyone go insane or like completely closed down. And I think it's also rare to see someone where it's rare to see in a movie where they had a trauma that you didn't witness. Like usually like you'll see it happen and then do like a year later or whatever. Because I think like the trauma she experienced is like, it's not revealed all at once. they do it over several. I mean, it's like 20 minutes in, you don't really know what happened to her,
Right.
but her mom is already not involved, but maybe they divorced or died, and then like, oh, and then Tatum, when they come to school, Tatum's like, she's like, it's worse than, well, it's really bad. You're like, oh, what is Tatum referencing?
Right.
And then they get into like when Sydney has to talk to the police. They're like, she's Sydney Prescott, daughter, and like something has happened to her.
Maureen's daughter.
Yeah, and you just like what the hell happened? And you don't really get to know until she's home and she watches the TV, and Gail kind of does a little recap.
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh, like this girl has already gone through some shit, and what, like, how is this going to play into does it play into her character? Is it that's going to be a plot of, is it attached to the whole movie? Because I feel like I'm thinking like the movie Hostel, where that, the guy, he had failed as a lifeguard. I think that's what it was. And
maybe
this trauma he experienced helped him survive this thing that's happening to him now.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's so different to have the trauma she experienced is related to what's happening now. It's all connected, which I feel like is that's very different than I think so many other movies had done. They just use they use that she went through this, she had to get strong because of it, and now she's strong to survive this. But it's all related, and there's so much mystery involved with, well, who did kill Sydney's mom? If it wasn't this guy Cotton Weary, then was it someone that we've already met? And so it's unraveling two mysteries at once of who killed Sydney's mom and who is now killing everybody else. And I just think that just makes her character so unique, because it's I feel like now she's gone through more than like any final girl ever has, and she's kicking ass, and she's smart, she's very smart, and she's also in so much denial of who her mom was. Because I feel like that's something like, if I heard my mom, I was like, oh no, your mom cheated on her husband, and she's up with all these people, I would never believe that. It's my mom, and I'm never gonna think that. And the fact the whole town is talking about her mom, and she's like, no, she's my mom, like she wouldn't do this. I think that's very relatable, because I mean, you like how, and even like when Tatum said, like, well, I mean, I kind of believe it. This year, like, your best friend also say that she kind of believes this whole theory. It just makes you feel for her so much, because it's her life is now completely flipped upside down, and it's crazy. She's such a strong character, and to see her life just completely a roller coaster of stuff is just so cool.
Yeah, she's already had a lot of adversity in her life before the events of Scream. Like a year before, her mother was savagely murdered, and she's had to kind of build a wall around her for this past year, as she's just trying to be a normal high school student with her friends and everything. And it's so interesting, having now been through 4 films, like to see at the very beginning just how just kind of innocent she is, and she's so young. But as soon as she learns of the deaths and this happening again, and it's like, oh my God, is this related in some way? Like that backstory of her mother's death, which I don't know if it's enormously successful in Scream 3, where we learn more about who her mom was and all of that. Like that's a kind of a later development by a different writer in the third one. But just in this one, I think that the inclusion of that backstory is done really well. The way she just like lays down on the couch, and there's Gail Weathers talking about what happened to her mom a year before with a flash of the picture and everything. You can tell that this is somebody who has a lot of strength already, as you said, that we're going to see in real time as the movie goes on towards the end, when she has to fight for her life. Just to really just forget the sequels, just the first movie, like the development of Sydney Prescott over the course of the film, and how physically strong she is towards the end, how she is not going to let this happen to her, how she's going to, in some ways do this for her mom, I just think that works really well. That's
Yeah,
what
I mean, I
makes it
feel
so
like
great.
opening Sydney and final Sydney are just completely different people, but and not in like a cheesy way, not in a like, oh, they just like almost a fake way. I mean, I think it was just her having to accept the fact that her life was not exactly what it was,
Hmm.
and uh now she has to. I mean, it's accepting one that her mother is dead, but also the fact that her mother was not this wonderful person that she
Right.
probably thought she was.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, that's going to be completely life changing. And she was in that denial period for so long, and finally seeing her kind of come out of it is it's so, you're so happy for her.
Yeah.
And it's done so gradually and
Hmm.
so like in a moment where like you don't even, it wasn't like, ooh, boom, she's a badass, she's kicking ass. Like it happened very slowly, and it's like you don't even realize until the end. You're like, oh, she's completely different now, and
Mm.
I love that. I love that aspect because I know,
Yeah.
even thinking of like that movie, You're Next,
Hmm.
which I adore that movie. But like there was an instant flip from where like you thought she was sweet, but she wasn't. She's kicking ass right away, and because that's who the character was, which is awesome. But it was a difference of like just seeing, um it was like, no, it wasn't like a switch was flipped, and I
Hmm.
like that about Sydney's character. It wasn't, yeah, it just happened over time.
And it's what's made her character so interesting to follow over many movies, that because of the death of her mother and then having to fight more than one person like for her life, like I understand why at the beginning of 3 she is secluded, that she is just
Oh yeah.
she's off the grid, she's done, she doesn't want to go through this again. You
Yeah.
understand why she has built up a little bit more resilience by Scream 4. It's been 10 years and she's on a book tour, and she's now not running away from the killer. When the killer comes into the house, she's the one running towards him, like Jamie Lee Curtis says at the end of Halloween H2O. Like, nope, I'm not running this
I'm
time.
done.
And
Yeah.
by 5, she has built up so much resilience. Like she is like when it's like when she hears of another killer, she's like, okay, where's my gun? I'm taking
Like
this guy down. What did
she's
she say in the
done.
trailer? Like, I'm not going to sleep until this guy's in the ground. Like,
Yeah, I'm not until he's in the ground. I'm
I
like,
just love
yes.
the evolution of her character over
Yeah.
each movie. It's always a little different, which I think is really cool
Yeah.
too. But just even in this
Absolutely.
first movie, you don't really see in that first scene where she's just like in her nightgown in the bedroom, and Billy, you can't come in here, my dad might find out. It's just very like innocent and like very
Hmm.
high schooly. Like, and you don't see in that first scene the strength that of the evolution to the end. I just love the way that plays out, and I love her first scene in the movie. The dialogue Kevin Williamson writes in that scene is really great. About, he's talking about watching The Exorcist. It was edited for television, reminds me of our relationship. I mean, just all of that's really great. The PG-13 relationship, like there's just a lot of really
Oh
fun
yeah.
dialogue. And I think after the Drew Barrymore scene, we need like some levity, some comedy. Like we need to like relax a little bit in that scene. So yeah, I think that's really great. And the introduction of her dad, who's such a great like red herring in this movie. When you first watch
Oh yeah.
Scream, you're like, I think the dad has something to do with it.
Oh yeah.
So it's always a surprise. It's like, oh nope, he's just not. He's like in the closet or the pantry or whatever it is. All right, so the next few scenes, we get our intro to Gale Weathers in the next scene, that beautiful shot where it's on a crane and it comes down all the way down, and then in the same shot we go off the crane and we get steady cam down the sidewalk following Sydney. We get our first glimpse at Gale, and the scenes in the high school leading up to our school fountain scene where we see all 5 of the teenagers together. Any thoughts you have on this section of the movie?
Yeah. So, well, one thing I always notice, I don't know why I always thought of this. I don't know if it was like a clue, but I remember Stu and Billy are wearing very similar colors, which is the same
Okay.
color that what's her name, that Casey also wore, like the cream color. She wore a sweater, but then also means Stu's wearing now a cream color sweater, and he's wearing like this other shirt as well. And I was like, I was like, oh, they're matching. And I think it's just now just seeing that now. It could be absolutely nothing, but
Mm-hmm.
I just always remember, I was like, oh, like they're matching in this scene as they're discussing it, and they're saying and this one, I mean, now just watching back, I'm just like, oh, like which one of those guys killed Casey? Was it Billy or was it Stu? Because Tatum's like, oh, Stu was with me last night, and like, well, that was that before he sliced and diced. Like, I was like, oh, like, who really was it? I mean, in my opinion, I think it was Billy that had done the killing and then went over to Sydney's house because he's psycho. I think Stu probably needed a little bit of a motive.
Have you broken down like who is the killer in which part of the movie? I haven't really done that.
Yes, so that's something I love doing that. I think in the second movie because the mom had mentioned when she had killed certain people.
Yeah, she says she killed Randy.
Like, yeah, and I was like, oh, like that makes me want to break down, who was killing. So I feel like, yeah, Bill. I think so far what I can tell, I think Billy had done most of the killing.
Okay, you think it's mostly Billy who's killing people?
Yeah, I think Billy definitely did. I think he did Casey. I think since apparently he was Stu was with Tatum that night. I think.
Oh, gotcha.
That was more so like, okay, well, it can't be Stu, and because I mean that's a good. And then he came
didn't
over
Billy date Casey? Like, is that a line in the fountain scene? One of them, Stu dated Casey. Dated Kate.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would have been? Why would Billy then be the killer of Casey if they not really have any connection to each other? Just because Stu was with Tatum that night?
I mean, that's what I was assuming. I feel like Stu and Tatum probably they have a wild ass sex life. And so I feel like I forgot some of your students might watch this. I forgot. But those two characters are pretty wild. So I feel like they were probably together. I feel like they were together all night. I feel like they spent the entire night together, which makes Stu probably not the one who had done it.
Yeah.
But I feel like Stu may have been like, oh, I dated Casey. Maybe he had a weird dropping out, didn't like her. Go kill her. Or maybe go, because I think they even said, oh, I heard she left him for Steve. So maybe Stu was like, oh, screw that, I'm gonna go kill her. Or Stu was like, hey, Billy, go do this.
Go for me. Do this for me, Billy.
Go do this for me real fast. Because I think Billy had much more motive than Stu did. Way more motive. So
that's interesting. I have not really ever sat down and tried to figure out like who is actually behind the mask at any given moment. Is it Stu or is it Billy? Because I feel like that might give me a headache trying to figure out. And I don't even know if like Craven and Williamson knew. Do you think they knew the answer to that every moment of the movie? Like who was actually behind the mask? I don't know. I would love to ask Williamson that question. Like, did you know? Like, did you have it? Like, if not in the script, like in your mind, like who was behind the mask at any given scene?
I know. Like, I'm pretty sure Billy killed Tatum. We think I saw this thing on Tumblr like a long time ago.
You think Billy killed Tatum?
I think Billy did kill Tatum. Only because after she gets killed, that's when Billy comes to the party and he like jumps in real fast and he gives this little look to Stu as in like, okay, he's just like, I did it. Like I got took care of it.
We know it's Stu. We know it's Stu when he slices Billy open. fake, but slices him open.
Yes.
Those parts I know.
You know what's funny is Stu may have killed the principal.
Okay.
I feel like Stu didn't do it. I feel like he just maybe killed the principal and then he took care of Kenny, the camera guy, for sure. Mm-hmm. And because Billy was upstairs, on
right.
the bed.
If we know where one of the guys are, then it's clear. But if we don't, I struggle figuring out who's who.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that fountain scene's really great. That's the scene that the school board, that's the scene they read. They said, we can't have this movie shoot here. We can't have a movie shoot here where they're talking about blood and guts on the school fountain. But I don't know. I think the movie needs that scene. We need like one moment at least where all the core 5 teenagers are together and talking. And one of my favorite things in that scene is when Randy jokes about the liver in the mailbox. And then the next scene, Sydney walks off the bus and then she checks the mailbox.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
You know what's funny? I forgot who mentioned that not that long ago. Maybe I read it.
Craven says it. Craven says it in the commentary. It's not something I noticed just by myself. Craven notes
maybe,
that. And
maybe
it always makes me laugh.
guess it was that because I think because and then when I watched it,
or maybe it's Williamson.
Like, oh yeah, he does.
It might be Williamson.
I never noticed it. I never thought of it until and I never thought of it. And then when I heard about it, I watched the scene and I was like, oh my god, that's so clever. I love it.
Yeah.
Also, the wig might come off. It's horribly itchy.
Okay. We've reached the moment. No more wig.
I reached the moment of we're like, oh my god, this thing is like.
This is about to. There we go. It like after about 90 minutes, it'll cut to black. So I just wanted to do that real quick. Oh, Casey, look at you. That's Casey's real hair. Looking good.
Real hair.
So yeah, anything else in that section? Obviously, we have the introduction to all the characters. Like Tatum, it's just Rose McGowan just hits it out of the park in this movie. Obviously, it's very well written. It's a very funny character, and she's just so great in this. Natural brunette. She dyed her hair blonde for the movie, and I think that was a good choice. I don't think they wanted her and Sydney to look too close, too similar. So she dyed her hair blonde. I think that was a good choice.
Yeah.
And we get our first glimpse of Linda Blair as one of the TV reporters. Linda Blair from The Exorcist. We get her a couple who Wes Craven directed in an early TV movie he did called Stranger in a House in the late 70s.
Oh.
Got Linda Blair back for a brief glimpse at the beginning. We also see, of course, Henry Winkler as the principal. The Fonz from Happy Days. Wes Craven was very surprised to learn that Henry Winkler wanted to be in a horror film, but he did. So he ended up being in the movie, and it has a great part coming up here. So let's talk about the Sydney, her first call with the killer. We haven't had like a really suspense moment, and since the Drew Barrymore sequence, we get the first one with Sydney where it's nighttime. She fell asleep, right? Like she conked out, and then she gets a phone call. First it's Tatum, who says, let's rent All the Right Moves. If you pause it just right, you can see Tom Cruise's penis. It's just quite the line. And then we get another call, and it's from the killer. What do we think of this? The first like kind of suspense sequence with Sydney, where the killer's coming after her. What do we think of that part?
So that whole scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
I love that scene so much. Yeah, I think I love just her disbelief at that this guy's calling her. She thinks it's Randy for pretty much the whole time,
right?
And just her commentary on it's like, oh, I don't watch that shit, horror movies. She's like, I know the line pretty well. What's the point? They're all the same. There's some stupid big-breasted girl. No, there's some stupid stalker
stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act. Who's always running upstairs, and you should be running out the front door. It's insulting.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just butchered it. Yeah, I mean, because it's funny because she runs up the stairs right away.
She runs up the stairs. Classic.
She does exactly. Which I feel like that's just maybe it could even just be like she's so freaked out that she's not even thinking anymore. She just has to get away.
Where there's a lock on the door and she can't open it. She's got 1 second.
Yeah.
Shit.
Okay, no time. I gotta go.
Yeah.
First of all, her stepping outside, thinking, it could be some guy. She steps out.
Could be Randy.
It could be Randy. She's picking her nose. She's just like, "What am I doing?" She's just like, "Haha, whatever. You're fine."
Picking my nose.
Because I feel like and of course, if you're watching a movie, we're like, "You're an idiot. What are you doing?" But in real life, if I got a call like that, I'd be like, "Probably nothing."
Probably nothing.
And then when he brings up her mom, ooh,
yeah,
that part that was just to me, it's almost similar to when it's the same for me, the same feel when the killer had said, "I want to know who I'm looking at" to Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
that instant oh crap. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with her. Do you want to die tonight? Your mother sure didn't. You're like, oh my god, he means business. So
there's a little bit of humor, and then when he says that line about her mom, you want to die just like your mother or whatever the line. Yeah, Neve Campbell's eyes and the close up Craven does on her face of just okay, any humor is gone now.
Yeah.
Like we
That
see
seems
that's the
done.
first time we really see a new Sydney. She's like not messing around now. Now it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what?
And
You do not bring up my mother, you know?
like no, like that is like it's awful. And then I mean, then it kind of incorporates the fact like, oh, maybe her mom is involved with this, or maybe like that whole past might come back together, or they're linked. Something I love with that is when before like the attack in the call, which is going around the house, she opens up that closet and there's like that the music like makes this like screechy sound, like and then she closes it, and then when she's attacked, it's the same shot, and then he comes out of the closet, and I just love that little. That's like, oh, like because you're watching like what's so scary about her opening up a closet, and then 5 minutes later, that's what that was for. And this her whole fight sequence is so good. Because one, she's kicking ass, but also I mean, if you now watching back, you know that like Ghostface doesn't want to kill her at this point. Like that was never the plan.
Yeah, he like the knife is coming up like he's going to, but it doesn't seem like this is the right time.
Yeah, he's just like he's doing it. I feel like he's doing it slow on purpose. Like he knows that like I need to intimidate her and freak her out. Because it's definitely not part of the plan. And then when she goes upstairs and closes her door the same way she closed
the closet and the bedroom door, and they like it's great.
Classic. You know what? What's so funny is I actually used to do the same thing in my old house.
Oh, really?
Where I used to live, the closet door and one of the other doors, they would close in together. So that way, like, like if someone wanted to break into my house, like, one, they could undo it pretty easily, but I would hear it because it's so loud. And I was just like, Sidney Prescott like has put that whole idea of like using two doors to lock each other. It's just like fantastic.
Yeah, Kevin Williamson says in the commentary he had two doors like that, and they had to like build that into the set. Like that was not a typical kind of thing. So they had to build that in so that they could do that shot of the killer trying to get in and he can't. It's so great.
And then when she does it in Scream 3, when she's in like the remake of the house.
That's one of my favorite parts of Scream 3, when she's running through the house with the same angles, the same shots, but it's the stage. That's really cool. That's one of my favorite parts of 3.
Loved it.
And did you know when she gets on the computer and she dials 911, they cut out the next shot, which was her putting in her address, and it said Elm Street.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they cut it out for time, Craven said, but there was going to be a reference that her street was Elm Street, which would have been really funny, especially since we get Freddy Krueger in a way in the coming scene here.
Absolutely.
So that's a great sequence, really suspenseful. You know, she goes to the station. Right before the station, we get like our real intro to Gale Weathers, where Kevin Williamson on the commentary said, I needed to nail this character in a line. And it's what she says to Kenny, her cameraman. I know you're about 50 pounds overweight, but when I say hurry, please interpret that as move your fat tub of lard ass now. Like that is classic Gale Weathers.
It's so like, because that's also why it's my favorite scene, because you get to see Gale just be Gale.
Yeah.
And I mean, and also with that, I feel like you get such a good dynamic. Like in that scene, you get, you know, you understand who Dewey is. Like when Dewey, like he yells when like he sees her. He like freaks out.
Yeah.
That just like, oh, that's very Dewey. Like he's very like a little like iffy, and then Gale just being a total like bitch in the best way. And Tatum's just like, get off your pain in the ass. Blah, blah. It definitely shows those characters so well.
It's a great mix. It's like, a great mix of personalities in the movie. Like there's just Tatum and Gale and Sidney and Dewey. It's just like very clearly set up, and the way they interact is so interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. I've watched that scene that's on YouTube so many times. I just love the whole sequence. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, fantastic.
And then it's back to comedy again. It's like, oh, scary. Back to comedy. Like we're back.
Yeah. Some comedy, you know, Tatum, the janitor is your superior. I love that line she says when they're leaving the station.
So
and then we get the station scene. We're suspecting Billy. Something that Kevin Williamson does so well in this movie, he mentions it in the commentary, is that he makes Billy such the obvious suspect that we, the audience, are like, it can't be him. Like he's front and center, the suspect, half an hour into the movie. Like we're not suspecting him because it's too obvious. That was something I thought that Williamson did that was very clever. it almost makes you think it has to be anyone else when it turns out not to be, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Which is it is so clever to do it that way. Like, I mean, like, it's everyone would have thought, oh, it can't be him because it's too obvious. And and then, you know, they kill him off. You're like, oh, we all knew that was going to happen. And then a big old twist, like, oh no, just kidding. Like,
and Sydney's getting the phone call. When Sydney gets the call as Billy's in jail, and then she gets the call, you got the wrong guy, Sydney. We, the audience, pretty much puts Billy out of our minds as a suspect, which is really well done. Yeah.
Even as creepy as he is, like,
like all of the close-up looks of him. Guy. All of his close-ups where he's just like staring at Sydney at the police station.
Oh yeah.
With his hair curling over, you're like, that's the killer.
Like, it has,
And we have to talk about the iconic punch.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a copy. Bam, bitch went down.
So
super bitch.
So Kevin Williamson said when his agent got to that scene, he said the script will sell. I think this agent had some trepidation about the amount of violence in it, but he said that scene where Sydney punches Gale, he said, okay, I think this might happen. And it did. Good. Everybody loves that moment. We need that moment early in the movie, I think, to really establish the connection between Gale and Sydney and the fact that Sydney is done with her shit.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just like, I mean, this adds on to the fact, I mean, just adding back into like what happened to her and what did Gale do to piss Sydney off so much. It creates so much backstory that I feel like does not happen in horror movies very often. And because you're so like involved with what's happening right then that like you're so invested because you really do want to find out what happened between the two of them, what happened, like what's Gale's connection with all this. It's so complex and I love it so much.
Just the dynamic between Sydney and Gale is a really interesting one throughout the movie. The way they're kind of enemies at the beginning and then the way they are closer together at the very end when they've both been through this traumatic event at the end, the way they're standing next to each other. I just love that as well.
Oh yeah.
And
it also means throughout all the movies as well. Even the relationship really isn't that strong throughout each. Like when they when you see them see each other again, you can tell they're not friends.
They're not hanging out on the weekend.
No, like even in the second one, they're like be kind, she saves our lives, but she doesn't really, and she hits her again in the second one, which is great.
It's a slap one too.
Oh yeah, it's so good. And then in the third one, she's like, "Oh, Gale," and Gale's like, "Oh, like should we hug?"
Yeah, Gale goes like this.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, this is weird." And then the fourth one, they're like, "Oh, it's good to see you again." It's like, oh, like because you can tell like her relationship with Dewey is still very close, and she's still very much connected to Dewey, and she loves him and all that stuff. But it's just seeing the relationship, it evolves, but also like she still has that big distance with Gale that I think is very I'm excited to see the new one.
Which will be curious to see how it's explored in the new one, because there is that great shot in the trailer of them standing next to each other, and they seem to be very much eye to eye in that moment. Whatever, I don't know if that's towards the end of the movie or whatever, but it looks like they're friendly in the fifth one.
So their relationship is so good. I love it so much.
Yeah. So that's a great part. We get the brief cameo of Liev Schreiber as Cotton Weary, who looks like he shot that part in like an hour, and then he's in like a big chunk. He's so important to Scream 2. I always love that. Like, okay, they got this, and he had done some dramatic roles in like indie films, and the fact that he's just briefly in the movie, but then he's like such a big part of 2, and then he's the opening kill of 3. I'm like, that nice that worked out. They didn't just pick some no name off the street for that little role in 1.
I wonder if it was pre-planned or.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he had been in a few things, but it's like, how did they attract Liev Schreiber to that little role? I mean, they wouldn't have said, "Oh, well, in the second one, we'll explore him more." I mean, nobody knew they were going to make a second one. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. Okay, let's get to the one scene in the movie I don't like so much. Do you know what scene I'm going to talk about?
The principal?
Not the principal scene. A little issue with that scene. It's not even the whole scene. It's the bathroom scene. I think her hiding in the stall while the two girls are talking about her mom and stuff, that part works pretty well. I've never understood why we see Ghostface in the bathroom. That part just always feels very strange.
So I agree. And what's funny is that like it took me a while to really understand that scene because it is a little too much.
Like, why is he at the school in the bathroom?
Exactly, and I think
to mess with her.
when they transition out of that scene, they're like, the news reporters says what appears to be a prank. Many students have been seen wearing this mask.
Oh, okay. So you think it's not Billy or Stu?
I don't think it is. Oh, no, sorry. You know what? I think actually it is, but they're not. They're being like weird on purpose, just to mess with her a little bit. I mean, I think it could go either way, because like you see that the guy running, you see the guy running down, down
the hallway,
down the hallway and being stupid.
That great scene of the principal screaming at them. I love that part where he's just like,
so good.
I would rip your inside. That's a great part.
Oh my god, ridiculous! I love it. So good, but I think it's hard to tell. I mean, I personally think it is Ghostface who's in the stall. They just want to spook her a little bit.
Okay.
But
it seems kind of dangerous on their part. Like that would be a way for them to be caught, right? Oh, there's someone in the bathroom. Like, I don't know. It just always feels a little bit like, I guess we need a moment of suspense there, but I just don't know if it benefits the movie in any way. To like, if that part weren't in it, I don't think anyone would miss it. Like, I don't think the movie would be any worse off or anything.
Yeah, I think that could totally be. I wonder if it's even maybe deleted from edited for TV. I wonder if that's been cut out at all.
One of them said they almost cut the bathroom scene, like to trim the movie down a little bit. Like there was talk of cutting that scene, but the part where the girls are talking about Sydney and her mom, like that, I think builds up her character a little bit. I don't want that gone.
Oh yeah.
I love having I don't know. There's something about the reveal of the Ghostface in the bathroom.
Well,
and then he doesn't even like have a knife. He just like runs at her, and then she just runs out of the room. It's just very anticlimactic. It's not, there's not a fight or anything.
I feel like I love that scene also because I love the term bubble butt boyfriend Billy.
Boyfriend Billy.
Yes, I love the alliteration with that. I think it's I use the term bubble butt boyfriend a lot. I think it's just hilarious. I get so funny. I'm just like, I'm a bubble butt boyfriend. It's that scene's so good. And I've also watching it in theaters with people the other last week was also very fun. Because everyone just started laughing because like that girl was ridiculous.
Where do you get this shit? Ricky Lake. That's a little dated reference.
Pathetic. You know what scene? The scene I wish I do not like. I don't want the scene in a grocery store. I didn't like that.
The shot of the ghost face in the reflection in the grocery store is the other moment I wrote down that I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah, that's it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It makes it a little cheesy. I was like this movie is a little cheesy, but like that's a little too much.
I mean, it's so brief, it's fine, but it's just like, really? No.
Yeah. And like it reminds me like when she and Tatum were talking on the porch and you see him like in the woods and stuff. Not necessary. I mean, that wasn't as bad. But I feel like, okay, like we know I like seeing him in his big moments of like chasing people down. I like seeing him when he does stuff. Like the little glimpses, like my favorite little glimpse of him was out in the opening when he was like when Casey looked in and he's like peeking around. I love that little like glimpse of him because I mean that's like your first time really seeing him.
Right.
But everything else, I feel like, can no one see him in a grocery store? Like what's going on? So.
But then we get the principal death scene, which did you know was not in the original script? That was added later. Bob Weinstein told Kevin Williamson, he said, "There's 30 pages without a single kill or anything. Like we figure it out. You need to kill somebody. One more character has to go." And so he decided on the principal, and so that was added later. And I really love that sequence. It's more suspenseful than it even has the right to be. Like we don't really know that guy very well. We've only seen him twice before in two brief scenes, but
we know Happy Days. So.
I struggle every time with the Wes Craven cameo as Fred Krueger, the janitor. It's the goofiest shot of the whole movie, but it's Wes as Fred, and it's just cool. But I mean, so it works just well enough. I can accept it. But that's like the most comedic shot of the whole thing. Wes Craven as Fred Krueger, the janitor.
That cleans stuff up.
Henry Winkler says, "Not you, Fred."
Well, you know what? Actually, the scene I don't like. The part I don't like within that scene was when they just show. I don't like when they show Ghostface in his eyeball. I'm just like not a fan of that shot.
When the principal's dying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a huge fan of that shot. However, they remade that shot in Halloween H2O.
Right.
Which I was just like, because like when the kid's looking into his eyes and you see his reflection, and I was like, oh, that's totally in Scream. And they remade. I have a whole list of things they did in H2O for Scream, but that was one thing I was like, oh, like that part is a little, it's a weird little shot, but
yeah. Scream 2 on the TV. Are you ready to die, Cece? They're like watching. They're watching Halloween and Scream, and they're watching Scream 2 and Halloween H2O.
Oh yeah, they've reused so much of the same music in H2O they'd use in Scream. I mean,
right.
I think
Marco Beltrami.
I was like, oh, this is the scene. When I hear the music, I'm like, that's the scene where Sydney did this, and like when that happened with that, I was like, oh my god, I was like, I know this way too well now, but it's, and like when they tell when Lori tells her kids to go down to the Becker's house, and which is like Casey Becker, I'm like, oh my god, and they had flipped it over before, and also the girl's name was Casey in it. I don't know if that's a connection, but the girlfriend in H2O, her name was Casey, and they also say the Beckers later on, and I was just like, maybe they named her Casey after that. But
probably. Well, it is Williamson again, so he's kind of doing a nod to his own work.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned Marco Beltrami. I think his music in here is spectacular. I read a little bit about how they got him for this. He had done a couple little things before this, but he was a discovery for Scream. Like they were trying to find a fresh new voice for the score, and they found him. He was very new and very young, and he is just, his score of Scream is amazing. It's fantastic. I love his score so much, and the songs we get Red Right Hand, which is such a important part, I think, at least of the first 3 movies. I don't know if we hear it in the 4th one, but I know we hear it a lot in the first 2. I think we hear it in the 3rd one. I think we hear it in the 3rd one.
I don't
I can't remember. And I know it's a big part of the 2nd one.
Yeah.
But I love the use of that song. Don't Fear the Reaper, which is also in the original Halloween. We get a variation on Don't Fear the Reaper in Scream, which I love too. Just the music is, do you have the soundtrack? I have the soundtrack still. I love the songs on them. Whisper to a Scream is very fun.
I've listened to it a couple of times. Yeah. And it's funny. I was just discussing this movie with a guy about the new one. And how he's really hoping, that this one will kind of incorporate like the old elements of Scream of using like songs throughout the movie. Because like the 4th one didn't really do that. And so he's hoping they bring that element back, because he did like it, made it feel more present. So hopefully that will happen. They will bring back that music, because it is kind of fun. And I feel like, because the director was saying how like this is Scream 5 is a fanboy film almost. That I feel like we're gonna get a lot of elements from the original one. So knock on wood on that. So I love the soundtrack here. I just think it's really well done, both the songs and the score by Beltrami.
Beltram. Marco's music is fantastic here. We get the video store scene, which is a great scene, a hit of nostalgia every time I see that, because we don't really have video stores anymore. And I love the way that Stu and Billy kind of team up on Randy the same way they team up on Sydney at the end. It's kind of foreshadowing the way that like they're over his shoulder and stuff. Like that's really cool. And Randy, we haven't talked much about Randy. He is also just a really important part of this movie. Like he's so good. Like he's the biggest movie geek of them all, and he makes this movie what it is too. I don't think the movie would be the same without him. Like he's the funniest of the main cast, and just, but also very real. Like when he's like injured and at the end, like we really feel for him and want him to survive. He's fantastic as well.
Well, I feel like he also really helps push this whole like trope of horror movies and like the rules of them. Like, I mean, he without him, we would like City mentions it, and they all like make little jokes about how like well the rules of a horror movie, but Randy really breaks it down. He's such like a nerd and such a fan of like these movies. So getting to he's very essential to this. And it'd be way different with him, because I feel like we wouldn't have the iconic scene where he's like, there are rules to surviving a horror movie, and he discusses all of them. Like that's such
can't have
an
sex.
Important part. You can't have sex, can't do drugs. I mean, there's such.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get
classic, to that. But yeah, we'll get. Also, I have until like 10:40, so we're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We're getting a little bit towards the end here. But yeah, let's get to these last few scenes of the movie. So we get to the night. There's a big party happening. All the characters come over there. Even Dewey, even Gail. They're all our core cast, all at this one location, which in the script was called Scene 118, and it's like 42 minutes of the movie. And when they finally finished shooting Scene 118, the whole cast and crew, they got shirts made up that says, "We survived Scene 118." Because it just went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was all the same scene because it's all happening at once at this one location. So,
yeah,
I always find that funny. But so they arrive at this party, and the first really important scene there is the death of Tatum. What do we think of the scene in the garage with Tatum?
I mean, that scene is like, it's so iconic that you kind of have to love it.
Yeah.
It is super cheesy. Like, okay, like why is she, trying to go out through a cat door? But it's so, I mean, I always remember that death scene because it's just, it's different. It's a little different. Like,
yeah, there's a nice mood
like that.
There's like a dark kind of mood texture to that scene that we don't see a lot in the rest of the movie, like the darkness of the garage and the way he doesn't pop out of nowhere. She turns around and there he is, just standing there, right, staring at her.
I feel like it's almost like she ran out of options. And I mean, first of all, I need to back up. We have to talk about when she opens up the door.
Oh, right, the reveal of her breasts.
I mean, that's
every 13-year-old boy's favorite.
Oh my god!
Shot.
I was watching the theater when that happened. Everyone just like started giggling. I was like, y'all are so immature, but it's also just like it's a pretty funny this little scene. It's a little shot, and you're like, it's kind of good. Like
I always wonder, like, did Rose McGowan know like the extent of that shot? Like, did Craven say, okay, this is what I want from it? Like, I'm always like, how much input did Rose McGowan have on that shot of when she opens the door?
Exactly.
Like, did she know exactly what was happening?
Well, I think she was wearing a bra in that scene.
Okay.
From what I remember. And I don't know. Maybe she was just like cool that she's like, yeah, like why not? Who cares? They're just breasts. Like, go ahead. But just like that opening little part, you're like, oh god, this is like, it's funny. I mean, it's unfortunately like, we find it funny. But she kicks ass in that scene though. Because actually Halloween H2O, they kind of remake that scene where she's throwing the bottles. Because then Laurie Strode starts throwing all the knives.
All the knives, yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I thought it was very Scream-like. And it's, she does what she can. She uses the refrigerator as a weapon. Like, it's
just couldn't quite fit through that.
It's fun.
Cat door.
Could not do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Marco Beltrami's score is great in that scene. A lot of suspense, but yeah, she fights. She does a good job fighting, and just the door had been a little bigger. Maybe she could have gotten through, but
a little bit.
I mean, I'm like, would the door handle that much weight? I don't know, but as the great joke in the Scary Movie from 2000, like the fat girl try to go through, but the door falls on top of her. I almost watched the scene in Scream. I'm like, that's a lot of weight on that door. I mean, it surprises me that it would go all the way to the top and snap her neck like that.
Exactly.
But
that's a pretty graphic scene, though. I mean, that I feel like you wouldn't expect to see it, and I think seeing her neck do that and her head get squished, that kind of it pays off, I guess. In its silliness. I was like, yeah, this is a little silly, but that was pretty. That's pretty horrific.
Yeah,
like
pretty horrific
the
death.
thought of that.
I mean, you kind of suspect that Tatum will die. That's a character, the kind of the quippy, like comic relief. Like you kind of know something might happen to her, but nobody in the party knows that's going on. And so that's when we get the rules, which you mentioned before. Something I haven't talked about, something I love about the second half of this movie is the way that Halloween and John Carpenter's score plays into the suspense of what's happening in Scream. The way that plays in is really cool. You know, we get Dewey walking through the house and we're hearing the score from Halloween while he's walking. I'm like, did they have to pay John Carpenter for that? Like, I've always wondered that. Like, did John, like they're using his music in the movie? I can't imagine that. Did they just have to license the footage from the movie, or did they have to actually go to Carpenter? I've always tried to find that out. I don't know.
Maybe it was like a loophole where they were like, well, if we can license the scene, we can just imagine it's just playing.
Yeah.
And it's playing in the movies, and we can just like, I mean, it's a good thought. I feel like that was just like a nice little loophole, which was very smart to do. Because I mean, oh my God, the whole scene with like, when the Halloween music is playing, it's just like, oh my God, it's because like anyone who loves horror music, they know that music so well, so that to hear it back again, it would just be so much fun. And to hear it like, used for a different movie is so fun.
There's so much clever writing of like Randy talking about the rules. You can never have sex. Of course, then Sydney has sex. So does that mean she's going to die? And the scene of Randy watching Halloween, look behind you, Jamie, look behind you. And there's the killer right behind him. I mean, there's so many of these clever moments that I feel like in the hands of a different director, it could have been too much, too obvious, but it just modulated just right. It's both funny. It's like funny and scary at the same time. It works in both ways.
I also love the fact that Jamie Kennedy saying, "Jamie, look behind you."
Yeah, Jamie.
Look behind you. I was like, oh, you know what's funny? I did not, until I watched it again last week, that didn't click with me. I was just like,
that he's saying his own name.
I was like, his name is Jamie. I was just like, why did I never figure this out?
Yep. Yeah. So that's a great part. We get the addition of Gail coming into the house and putting that camera there. I think that's adds some suspense too. Craven said on the commentary, something he hadn't done a whole lot before as a filmmaker is make a movie where there's all these different kinds of media, right? It's like we're watching people watch something. It's like we've got Kenny watching that little screen. We got Randy watching the TV with Halloween playing. So you almost have like 3 or 4 levels of different things that people are watching to build the suspense. And the fact that there's a 30-second delay, I think that adds something really suspenseful too. And just all of that mixed media is really cool.
We have to give our props to Kenny as well.
Kenny, yes,
he's a hero. He is a fantastic guy. I'm sad to see him go because, like, I think
poor Kenny. Earl Brown is that actor's name.
W. Earl Brown. Well, he's so funny. Also, just did a great job. But he goes in to go try and save Randy.
Right. He's like getting out of the van.
He's like, I'm gonna go help him, which is like, what a sweet guy. And then of course he made like 30-second delay. But also, I mean, I feel like it's something a lot of people don't notice. I didn't notice it for the first few times I really watched Scream, but he points Sydney in the direction of where she can get out of the car when he's.
I've never noticed that. Does he point?
Yeah.
To like this is where you have to go.
Yes.
Oh, I've never noticed that.
Because I noticed it like years ago, but I was like, maybe it's just the way he's falling. I'm not quite sure. But then when I watched it a few more times, I was like, oh, like he really is, because he's doing this and he's like pointing this way, but he's like looking. He does like a back and forth with her, and then she goes underneath. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my! And I think it was like on a Scream Tumblr blog I follow that they brought that up, and I was like, I'm so happy that someone else like kind of confirmed this. I always thought that's what it was, and it just like it makes me love Kenny so much more because like he's such a good guy to like. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna go save these kids, and he dies in the process of it, but he saved Sydney, I think, in that scene for sure. And he bought her some time, and also he pointed out the exit. So
and you really feel for him when he's dying and he looks into Sydney's eyes and just that panic and fear. Like you really feel for him as he dies. It's not just like he's not just thrown to the side. Like you have a moment with him as he's dying, and I think that's really effective too. Even a side character like that gets his moment in the movie. Yeah, absolutely. And then Sydney, of course, she has sex with Billy, and then soon, like they're just like getting their clothes back on. I mean, like they're just getting like, isn't she tying her shoes or he's tying his shoes? And then boom, the killer comes in. Oh my God, it's not Billy after all. And we get the great sequence of Sydney escaping and jumping off the roof, which is really scary. Like when we don't see the boat at first, and she like falls from the house. You're like, oh my God. But she hits the boat.
She's good.
And seeing her best friend dead on the the garage door, like that's a really terrifying moment for Sydney too.
Oh, traumatic, yeah.
And Gail,
I feel like people I forgot. I feel like people had maybe forgot about Tatum at that point. That's, I mean, this whole the whole last scene is so long. You kind of just like, oh yeah, like Tatum's up there where you forgot.
And we haven't talked about Gail and Dewey go on a walk together. They're flirting, a relationship that plays out over the course of many movies. I mean, they eventually get married, like by the fourth movie, and so there's all these like developments with that couple too, which also mirrored their real life, which is really interesting. Like they started dating on the second one, they were married by the third one, they were divorced right after the fourth. It was like interesting how their relationship in the story kind of mirrored their own lives.
It really did, yeah.
They have a great chemistry. You can tell that there's something there between them, and even just those scenes where they're walking and talking. But Gail, we start to see a different side to Gail by the time that she's driving the van and she swerves out of the way to miss Sydney. Like you can tell she does have a heart to her. She's not just this cynical, news person, like who will just do anything for her story. We get to see a different side to her in the last 30 minutes of the movie, which I also appreciate.
Oh yeah. And well, I feel like, and I mean, the whole time she was with Dewey, you're like, oh, she's using him so much. Like you can just kind of feel it. I mean, maybe she wasn't, but then also in the second one, when like they're not together, and she had written some like cheap stuff about Dewey in the book that she wrote after. You're like, oh, was she really just using him the whole time? But like, I feel like it develops very slow. They're just such different people,
right?
It's very hard to like even imagine them really together. But I mean, they're kind of cute. I like the idea of Dewey just like getting, he gets a girl that is not what he would probably expect, and I'm sure she wouldn't expect to have a guy like him either. It's sweet. Very sweet.
So that works really well. And then we get the classic scene of Sydney in the car. She locked herself in that car, but that was another great Wes Craven moment. I guess Kevin Williamson had written that scene in a different script like earlier, but wanted to use it in some way. And then when it came to Scream, he just, okay, this is the right place to use the scene of being locked in a car like this and having to hit the locks. And as the trunk is opening behind her, that's another great Wes Craven suspense scene too.
And they remade that scene actually in what's the movie called? The Strangers Pray at Night. They kind of recreated that.
Right, okay.
Which was kind of that was pretty fun. Because it was definitely like he waved the keys and everything, and I was like, oh, this is totally Scream. And then they then redid the whole Texas Chainsaw ending, where she's in the back of a truck and they're like coming at her and she's like freaking out in the back. They did that too, that was pretty cool.
And I like how in Scream 2 we got an even more suspenseful car scene when they're both crawling over the killer out the window. That's even scarier in the second one.
So good. Oh my
really
God.
Well done.
Actually, probably my best friend, that's her favorite scene. She loves that whole
that scene in Scream 2.
It's one of the rare things where like they're face to face with him, and you don't. It's like a long, drawn out scene where they're next to him the whole time. It's not like a quick little run back and forth. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So that I love that scene in Scream in the car, and that's kind of like the last self-contained scene with like one character. After that, all bets are off. We're in the house where we get the reveal of the killers. So what do we think of the reveal of Billy and Stu as the killers? Has that always been satisfying to you? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for me, yes, it makes. I mean, it's so satisfying. One, it's like a fun little twist to see that the character you thought it was, and you thought it wasn't, and then you really thought it wasn't because he was, dead. to see him, you're like, oh, he's gonna be a hero now, and then like, no, he's not. He's just a lunatic. So it's almost like, oh, you were right all along.
Yeah.
But now he's fucking deranged. And then I think everyone was really happy to see. I think because Stu's such a funny character, it was kind of fun to have him be this like. I feel like he didn't. That's why I feel like he didn't do many of the kills because he's so like goofy. I feel like he wasn't too much into that. He was more into the fun of harassing people.
Yeah.
So I love. I mean, the whole thing with him on the phone, like my mom and dad are gonna be so bad at me, and like, did you really?
It adds some humor to it, and it just incredibly intense scene when they're stabbing each other. That's the other big part of the movie that the MPAA had an issue with. They were like, we can't, and that was a back and forth for many weeks. But that scene is so intense that I think we need some of that humor from Stu when he's bleeding out and he's just like saying all those, my mom's gonna be so mad at me. It's so great. Do we think that Stu and Billy? Do you think there was anything happening there with those two? Do you think? I always think like maybe Stu had a quiet thing for Billy. Maybe.
Okay, I could see it. I could definitely see, because I know a lot of people discuss that as well.
Yeah.
I never thought of it in that way, actually.
Okay.
I never thought that they had any relationship.
Right. I don't think they did either. I just think maybe there might have been like some feelings.
I could see Stu maybe getting really invested.
Okay.
I think because maybe he felt special. Billy was definitely the one who told Stu, hey, let's do this.
Right.
So I feel like maybe it made Stu feel a little special. Because first of all, Billy's motive is so like full circle of this like everything with Sydney, like you're a slut mother, fuck my father, and he's the reason my mom moved out and abandoned me. Like that's Sydney's like realization of like, oh my god, this is all connected and I've been wrong the whole time. That's such a great scene. Also, it gives us a lot of closure with just the fact that now we finally solved two mysteries. Now we have two mysteries solved. One, who killed Sydney's mom, and now also who's now killing everyone else.
Right.
And that was Nev Campbell's like expression when he says that. It's just like, it's so good. It's so good. So good.
And I love how the screenplay keeps coming with the movie references. It's not like it's lost in the last half hour. We're up until the end. She's like, you've seen one too many scary movies. And what does he say? Movies don't create psychos. They just make psychos more creative. There's so many great lines. I forgot to mention that early line. I love that early line where she says, this is life. This isn't a movie. And he says, it's all just one big movie. You just can't pick your genre. Like there's so many like really clever lines about films in this. That in the hands of the wrong director might have been too comedic or stupid, like the way that it always comes across really well in this with the tone and everything. And so I love that line. And then I love that you at this point you think Gale Weathers. I almost think you forget about her. So when she returns with the gun, it's so great. Like returns fantastic.
Well, I think everyone kind of liked Gale at this point. Like, I mean, like she's mean, but like you enjoy her. So then now to see her kind of have the upper hand, you're like, it's unexpected, because she would have been probably a kill-off character originally, like if it was a regular horror movie.
Yeah, if it was a lesser actress, maybe that would have been a character to go earlier. But it's Courtney Cox, and she's so great, and she comes in, and she kind of saves the day. She allows Sydney to get away, even though she didn't have the gun off safety. But then of course she gets her shot, and eventually, I think it was so. Oh my god, Gale in the ending scene is so iconic, so good. And now her shoes are off. I'm barefoot now. Like I'm done with this. Like I'm not in these shoes anymore. And it's a new side to that character too, to see her face just all bloodied up and her hair's a mess, and it's not the perfectly like coiffed like hair that she has for the first half of the movie. And now she's just a person. She's just like, she wants to do the right thing and take these guys down. Which is really great.
And she still gets her shot. She still gets to make her report.
She comes back. The safety's on. They slam her down. and Billy's about to shoot her, right? But then Sydney has gone missing. So like he almost kills her, but because Sydney has gone missing, and then they have to go find her. And then
it's so stretched out.
Right before that, like, do you like the scene where they're stabbing each other like that? What does that show about their characters?
I do like that scene. I remember how that scene was also cropped as well for TBS.
How do you show that on TBS?
You can't. And it's like the scene where like his hand is like dripping blood and everything. And, like they point down to the dad. I had to shoot that over because it was just too much. I mean, it really just shows us how deranged they are, and how how like they really want to pull this off. It's so similar to Scream 4 with Jill as well, with her whole scene where she tries to make herself look like a victim. And it's crazy. But also, I mean, Billy goes so hard on Sue and just like slicing him up so much. He's just like, he's letting some stuff out for sure.
That last time he stabbed Stu, it's like really deep. You're like, whoa, okay, this isn't going to end well for Stu.
A little woozy here.
So all of that's I think it's just the right amount of intensity. And I understand at this point, these two guys are just gone. So it just makes sense to me that they would do that. But that takes us to the ending here where Sydney is hiding in the closet. She takes Billy down, but he gets on top of her and he's almost about to stab her. And we get the triumphant return of Gale to actually finally shoot him. I remember the the safety that time, you bastard. What she said. It's so great.
Well, the part when Sydney calls the house.
Right.
When she calls,
and you can tell it's her voice.
Like, a little bit. I was just like, I guess it wasn't working that great for this part, but it's. I love that the tables had officially turned at that point, and when she kills Stu with the TV, and it's like Laurie Strode, like, and it goes down.
Yeah, and Laurie Strode is on the TV as the TV kills, and then we get right after that we get Billy. The reason that Billy is not on his game is he's looking for Sydney, but he looks over and he watches Halloween on the TV. That's what distracts him, and he gets hit by Sydney. I just love the way that, as I said, Halloween, the movie, plays a role in this movie. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, it's they. And then of course, like, Halloween show then flips it around where they do so many of the same things again. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is movie porn.
That was Kevin Williamson's horror movie porn. That was Kevin Williamson's favorite movie, was Halloween. And just I wonder if there was any. I didn't read if there was any struggle with getting Halloween footage for Scream. I imagine that it wasn't a big deal, but it's a pretty iconic movie. It might have been tricky to get the footage.
Like, for me, it makes me want to watch Halloween more. So I'd go out and buy Halloween after that if I kept seeing it like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just so fun. I really hope we get to see more. I feel like this new one coming out, Scream 5, I feel like they're going to be doing a lot of homages to the original one.
Yeah.
Because obviously we can tell that they go back to Stu's house for some reason, which I'm very excited
we
for.
briefly see the house.
So I'm like, are they gonna like remake some stuff? Like, which I'm super hyped for. I think that'd be really fun. So I hope they do a similar thing where because I feel like I really want all these references back again. Because I think Scream 4 did a really good job. Like, Scream 3 didn't touch on it too much, but Scream 4 did a really good job with bringing all this stuff back. So I really hope this Scream 5 will do the same. And also, I mean, I think we have to talk about Sydney's, her final line, "Not in my movie." Like,
we always get the last scare and her just shooting him in the head and saying, "Not in my movie." That is a great, and that not every actress could have sold that line, and she does it beautifully.
No, and it puts you in a spot where like you're watching a movie and you're enjoying it because like it's like a movie. It was like a movie within a movie kind of feel like, because you're like, she doesn't know like she's in a movie because they're watching it, but Sydney one has so many. My favorite lines in each of one of them of all the movies, like in Scream 2 when she says like you forgot one thing about Billy Loomis. I fucking killed him. And then she hits the mom. And I was like, that's so good. And in Scream 3, I don't think there's really a hardcore line I like that she says.
Yeah,
like
in the final fight,
word.
in the final fight with her brother in Scream 3, is there a great line? I mean, she says like stab 3, right? And then she stabs him a third time.
Oh yeah.
Not as good. Yeah, or when she's just shouting at Dewey, shoot him in the head, shoot him in the head.
I think my favorite part was actually when they both say fuck you, like that's it in Scream 3. And I think it was just really funny. I was like, they're just fighting like siblings at this point.
No, I like in Scream 3 when she shouts at him, she says, God, I've heard this shit before. You know why you keep kill people, do you? Because you choose to. There is no other reason. Like, I like that part from Sydney.
Yes.
He's like done with it at the end of 3.
She's like, oh my God. Like, I'm so done with this.
You have all these motives, and it's like, I don't care. You're doing this because you choose to. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, she's always, and then of course that classic line at the end of 4 that both made us both cheer. So yeah, this is her moment at the end, and then we get one final scare from the dad, who I remember when I watched this movie the first time in the theater, I thought the dad was going to be the killer because he was off screen the whole movie. I'm like, well, that's going to have a payoff. Doesn't really. He's just been, like he's been in the closet or whatever. But but she has her dad. He's okay. And then we get the final shot, which I guess they only had 2 takes to do it because the sun was coming out and they wanted that magic hour light. And Courtney Cox had to memorize all that dialogue. And I guess the shot we see in the movie was the first take. And she got it. And that beautiful last shot as the camera pans up and over and we see the countryside, so beautiful, of that early morning light. And one of my favorites, Moby, his song First Cool Hive, which is one of my favorites of his, plays over the last shot of the movie too, which also just adds something a little special to it as well. That was the song that I ended my own feature film when I was in high school. I made a feature length.
Oh really?
The last shot of the 2 characters walking away from the camera triumphantly, I slowed it down and I played the same song that ends Scream, First Cool Hive, at the end of my movie. So that's an important role in my life too, that song. So I mean, we nitpicked a couple like little things. This movie for me is almost perfect. I mean, this is just, and it's so really funny because it's 1996. It could be very dated. Yes, there's the occasional dated reference here and there, like Ricky Lake and some of these things. The video store scene. If you're a young person watching Scream, you're like, what's this? Like, it's a little bit, but for the most part, watching it again this week, I'm like, it doesn't feel that dated, even though it came out 25 years ago, right? Do you think it's held up well over 25 years?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's my favorite movie of all time. It really is. Like, it's my number one.
Number one of all time.
Of all time, it is my number one favorite movie. I feel like it just doesn't get old. It really doesn't. I think it holds fresh up so well. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it's like if I needed to watch a movie of the 90s, this is what I would watch. I mean, there's so many great pop culture references throughout the entire thing. And just it's such a great spin and revival of slasher horror movies. Yeah. Because like I think it's the care. I just love the characters so much. Mm-hmm. And they're all done so perfectly well, and just they're also different. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's true. I mean, I can't think of something I don't like, other than like the occasional 2 cheesy little parts. Other than that, I was like, there's nothing I hate about this movie. I mean, mm-hmm. I think of it and I'm just like, I love it. Like for me. It has 100%, right? Like, if I had Rotten Tomatoes, like that's 100% for me. Like, even Scream 2, I'm like, Scream 2 for me is like 99.9%, just because I don't want to like, I like Scream 1 so much. Also, there has to be something. I was like, it's not Scream 1. That's the only thing I have for it. It's pretty much it. And I'm so excited for this new one. I think it's gonna be. I think it's going to be good. I really trust these 2 guys. Ready or Not was fantastic, and Zodiac is a great movie as well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's a good team, and I really trust the actors to make. I really trust the actors read the script and they feel like this is what Wes Craven would have liked, right? And that's why they agreed to do it. So I'm definitely I'm confident that it will be a good movie.
And I'm so happy, just to kind of wrap up here, I'm so happy that Scream did find its audience. It came out December 20th. It was a very strange time to release a horror film. Did not open very well. The opening weekend only made $6 million. This movie could have faded and we never would have had Scream 2 and on. But the audience found it over that holiday season, and it topped out at by the spring, it topped out at 100 million, 103 million. And it was enough for them to greenlight the sequel. And that's what's led to all of these really fun sequels. And now we have the new one coming out. I love elements of 2, 3, 4. I'm sure, really enjoy the new one. Nothing for me comes close to the original. I think this is like a near perfect film. It's one of my favorites of all time. One of my top 2 or 3 in the horror genre. I just love everything about it. A great script by Kevin Williamson, Wes Craven at the top of his game, and just a perfect cast. Just the best choices from the smallest roles to the largest roles in this movie. I think it's why the franchise is still going strong today, because of the casting of these great actors in these roles that might not have been obvious in 1996, but they got the right people, and they have been great ever since, and especially in this first movie, Scream. Boy, it has been fun to talk to you about this movie. Andrew, I could go another hour. I knew that this was going to be a long one. I mean, we didn't even really touch. I was going to talk about Scream 2, 3, 4 a little bit more detail. How about we do that next year? We'll do an episode on Scream 2 for that 25th anniversary.
We can do that. Well, first of all, and now, what is your favorite scary movie? Is it Scream?
My favorite scary movie is Halloween. That's that movie, special place in my heart. That movie, that's the one I think is just absolutely timeless. If I had to pick a second favorite, probably would be Scream. Yeah. Okay. I mean, and they're so linked, right? I mean, we see Halloween in Scream. They are very much in my mind linked together. I just think there's something so classy and just beautiful about Halloween from '78. Scream is almost as good. But they're very different movies.
So, I think also because it's funny because Halloween took place in the real world as well, because they're watching horror movies on the screen as well, with the flip back and forth between sequels. And I think people also really loved Halloween as well, because it was very real. It was set in the real world. They were watching The Thing, right? They were watching The Thing in that movie, I think, in Halloween? What movie?
Oh, right. So in Halloween, they're watching the original 1951 The Thing from Another World, the black and white on the TV. Yeah, so it almost goes back to that movie. They're watching an older horror film. John Carpenter would then go on to remake The Thing in 1982, which I always think is like a cool connection.
Very fun, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been going back all the way. I mean, there are other horror films, of course, I love. Psycho's a big one for me. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street is in my top 5 horror films. The original Nightmare by Wes Craven is just an amazing movie. There's just something about Scream. I saw it at just the right age. I just turned 12. I'll never forget that experience watching it with my dad on opening night. And it was just, it's always stuck with me. And watching it again, 25 years later, it still holds up. It's still a great ride. Really entertaining. One of the most entertaining horror films ever. There's no lulls in this movie. It just moves along at such a fast pace, but never too fast to where you're like, hey, slow down, movie. It's just the right pace all the way through.
It doesn't. It's funny because I've introduced this movie to a few other people who had never really seen it, and not one person has been disappointed. They're like, this is such a great movie. And I was like, see, it's just so good.
Yeah.
There's just so many great elements.
Some people might look at the date of 1996 and go, oh, nope, that's too old.
Yeah.
But don't let that happen. If you've never seen Scream, I mean, we've kind of spoiled the whole thing, so I hope you have not been listening to this if you haven't seen it. But if you haven't seen it in a long time, give it another go. I know a lot of people are probably going to watch it before the new one comes out in January. I'll probably watch it again the night before. Why not?
I probably will, for sure.
But we have, so this will be dropping on December 14th. We have a new Scream coming in January. Maybe we could even do a bonus episode or something about that one.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about the new Scream, I think I'm going to need to talk to somebody about that, either for the podcast or not for the podcast. I'm going to need a big fan of the series to really bounce our ideas off of each other. I'm going to need someone to talk to. So that might be you, Andrew.
I would love to.
All right. So as we wrap up here, anything else you wanted to say about the movie? Anything you'd like to promote, or where our listeners can find you online?
No, I'm mostly just on, also pretty much all social media. Eric 94. It's funny because I feel like ever since like I've been really getting into horror movies even more just because with all these Callie
got excited about something.
Yeah, I just feel like there's so many new horror movies coming out that I'm just like talking about it way more. I bought so much Scream and horror movie merchandise lately. Old Navy has Scream 2 shirts out, so just heads up.
Oh,
they're great. I love them.
Cool.
No, I mean, I don't have much to promote. I'm so excited for the new Scream. Mm-hmm. I think about it all the time. So I'm very excited.
Well, if you are also a fan of Scream, reach out to us. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Tell us your thoughts. Tell us what you're excited about with the new movie. Excited to see it. Hopefully we can talk about it in the coming weeks. I'm excited to see the new one. And as always, the original Scream from '96. One of the great movies of all time, not just horror films. This is one of the great movies. Definitely holds up still very well in 2021. So thanks for being here, Andrew. And thanks to all of you for listening. We will catch you next time on Film at 50.